Hello, and welcome to episode 147 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I am your host, Derek Heemsbergen. I am at Embryonics on Twitter. That's at EMBRYONX. And I am joined by yet another motley crew of RPG fans from around the globe. First of all, I've got Alana Higgs.
Hello, at Alana Higgs on Twitter. Nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you. And I didn't give anybody nicknames today, so sorry, y'all. Gonna have to suck it up. We've also got Caitlin Argeros.
Hey guys, Leanne Kazerl on everything, pretty much, I think.
Yes. And also an excellent person for recommending burger joints in St. Louis, because we got to have dinner together for the first time recently. That was cool.
Yeah, I know a few things, just a few.
She sure do. And we're also joined by Mike Solosi.
Hey, at The Real Monsoon on Twitter, and some variation of the word monsoon in most places.
And that's him. And finally, the ever delectable Robert Fenner.
To what do I owe the honor? It's me, folks, Miss Anthrobob on Twitter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And he's also got an excellent podcast that he's running, Misspent Youth, which we can plug later on.
Come on.
I want to support what everybody's doing in their lives. So,
Plus, I think the panelists on this podcast are maybe all on future episodes of that one.
Yeah.
We'll be that.
Entirely possible. Yeah, we're branching out. We're multifaceted folks over here. It's not all RPGs, just like mostly RPGs. So. Well, as usual, we have a giganto episode full of stuff to talk about. It seems like we've all been playing something here or there, and I wanted to start the show by just kind of touching on E3 one more time. Our last episode was the big E3 blowout episode, which had an even larger assortment of people speaking, because it's very infrequent, usually just once a year, that we're able to get the entire RPG fan crew, or not the entire crew, but like a lot of us in one room. So it's always fun to hear everybody's perspectives sort of on the fly like that. And hopefully the compromised audio quality is worth the nature of the discussion. So, but I wanted to talk to the folks here because not everybody in this episode today was at E3. We were missing Fenner and Caitlin. So I especially wanted to get their thoughts on a couple of things. So E3 2018, it's come, it's gone. Is there anything that stood out to you as like super amazing or surprising? I'll start with you, Caitlin.
Well, Microsoft having by far the best conference is something I wouldn't have expected at all.
Right?
Yeah, it was amazing. They actually just focused on games and didn't waste a lot of time talking about their, failed social media or their failed hardware or their failed awful UI, which is still kind of bad. But just games, a lot of multi-platform games too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, good for Microsoft. I'm wondering if Sony was kind of like, damn, they got all the good ones. What can we do?
Yeah, and that's why they had a smaller one, you think?
Yeah. Or, I mean, it was an interesting experiment on their part to have it be focused on just a few big name titles and not necessarily have it be a bombardment of everything that's under the sun. It sounds like it was maybe a better experience for those who got to see it in person as opposed to everyone at home who had to wait for like half an hour while the venue changed. I did think, though, that the initial venue, that was a really cool moment because we all saw the trailer for Last of Us 2 and then saw that the arena, the venue was basically just that big barn made up to be like a dance floor. That was really cool. But I mean, Microsoft just had an amazing show, and I think all of us were super stoked to see Cyberpunk there at the end. That's kind of, considering that it was just a gameplay trailer, it wasn't actually like a walkthrough demo. We still have not gotten to see the behind closed doors demo. I'm still kind of like, that's my number one most excited game from E3. So
most intriguing, yeah.
From like a 2-minute trailer at the end of a presser, good job, CD Projekt Red. Good job.
And also, isn't the Microsoft conference where they first dropped the Devil Trigger, Devil May Cry 5?
Yeah.
See, that's greatest thing of E3, Devil Trigger. Come on.
Pull my Devil Trigger.
Yeah, that's it. I still actually haven't bought it on iTunes because I'm a fake fan, but I need to. I was up buying Eurovision singles last night on iTunes, so I guess my trigger finger is only susceptible to certain types of music. Yeah, I need to buy that damn thing. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think Cyberpunk also sounds like it's very interesting, and I wish we could have all seen what Trent got to see behind closed doors because I know he was over the moon about that.
And it was for every venue, it was one person only that they were supposed to send. So it was
Yeah.
a very limited demo, and
Yes.
Trent was crazy about it. And just reading the materials he brought back for us, because he brought back a brochure and some other things. And from his description and from those materials, it looked amazing.
Mm-hmm. He was quite enthusiastic about it. So cool. How about you, Fenner? Was there anything that you were crazy about at E3 or?
Oh, I don't know if there was a whole lot for me this year. I'm happy with everything that was shown, and that I wouldn't take it away from anybody. There wasn't a whole lot that jumped out at me. I mean, much like Caitlin, I am very much looking forward to Cyberpunk. From an aesthetic standpoint, it's really walking the walk. I couldn't stand the narration, which I assume is the protagonist, who I know is going to give. They're going to give the option of customizing your character, male or female, and I've lost my train of thought. I think my cat might be out on the ledge.
Worst? No.
Enough about Cyberpunk. I was thrilled to see that Fist of the North Star has gotten a localization announcement, and our own Mike Solosi has written that up.
I'll talk about that in just a minute.
I'm sure you will. And the other big thing that really surprised me was Dying Light 2. I really, really liked that first game.
Yes.
And
Very
seeing that Chris Avellone is involved, and he's a pretty incredible writer in the game space. So I trust that they will come up with something very interesting.
What else has Chris Avellone done? This is
Planescape Torment.
Okay.
Fallout 2, Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily. Dying Light 2 in particular is pretty heavily geared towards choice, and what me and Trent saw looked very like the consequences are quite significant between choosing yes or choosing no. So it was, I never played
We might
one.
actually have to cover it. It looks like it's got a lot of RPG elements thrown into
Frankly,
it.
we probably should have covered that first game.
Yeah, we
because
should have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trent's written a preview, so go and check that out. I recommend it. He's been very thorough. So, he loved it. He's a big fan of the first game. Yeah.
I mean,
it looked really
something sort of by name alone I wouldn't have even considered to be within my purview, but hearing you talk so enthusiastically about it, you and Trent, after getting experience with it, makes me like, I wonder. And also with somebody, I mean, all you had to say was Planescape Torment, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, great
Solid.
writing.
Yeah, Trent was a big fan of Dying Light 1, but he came out of that Dying Light 2 demo. It's like it's what I liked about the first one, but with better storytelling and more choice, and he was real excited by it.
Cool.
One setting was amazing, but the story had a lot of it was very lacking.
Yes.
So seeing this very unique take on it sounds like things don't get better at the end of that first game from what I've seen of what they've shown off of the sequel. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. But sometimes unhappy endings make for compelling stories, So I think we probably went on enough about E3 in the previous episode. I just wanted to at least get the perspective of the couple of folks who weren't able to be there at the show proper. And I think pretty much everybody who was there universally agreed. I mean, maybe it wasn't everybody's favorite of the entire group, but Dragon Quest XI, we pretty much all are looking forward to that more than most anything other than Cyberpunk, seeing as our two show-wide awards were for Dragon Quest XI and Cyberpunk. So can't wait to get my hands on that. I'm sure most of us feel that way, and we'll definitely have continued coverage of it because, Dragon Quest is amazing, and we have a lot of big fans here. So I have also seen, funny enough, like, they're really promoting Dragon Quest XI. They've been bringing it to, they brought it to, like, Paris Games Expo, or I think that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And it was at Anime Expo this weekend, which is still going on as of right now.
A lot of great announcements coming out of that, too.
Yeah, some surprising ones, too, like Deathmark.
Yes.
To Vita, or is it coming to Vita, or is that one only coming to Switch? PC?
Vita, PS4, and Switch, all three.
Yeah. And what else have they announced? Zonky Zero coming out early next year, which is very exciting. The Danganronpa writers or teams, right? Is it the team or is it just?
Team.
The writer's not involved, I don't think. I think it's just the rest of the team.
Oh, okay. But that's the upcoming like survival RPG with the people who age and die every like 7 days, right? 14 days.
Yeah.
rapidly, we'll say.
Yeah.
And then
That-
also,
I think also Uchikoshi's new game.
yes, that's what I was going to bring.
Yeah,
up.
that looks dope.
AI
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI: The Somnium Files, which is a murder mystery of sorts, written by Kotaro Uchikoshi, who worked on the Zero Escape trilogy.
yeah. And the graphical style actually looks, and from what very little they showed, it's like the same art style as Zero Escape.
Yeah,
So-
very similar.
It's exciting. Yeah. What else? Is there anything else?
Do they have Kinu Nishimura back?
I'm not 100% sure.
I
I'd
wonder.
have to look up more info on that. But I know that they also announced Death End Request. Aren't we excited for that?
Oh, is that the new Compile Heart?
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Nathan's not here, so I feel kind
Yeah.
of bad picking on it like this. But
Well,
although I will
Um,
say, because that's the one where like all of the characters get I don't even really know the premise of the game, but each character has like a glitched outfit, and it basically just like takes all their clothes away and barely covers it up. So not to get into that whole discussion, but Steph, of course it does, right? But Steph drew on her art Tumblr, or her art account. She created like one of those glitch costumes for one of the male characters in the game because she was like, it's not really fair. So it's just like a dude with a tiny little piece of pixel covering like his junk or whatever. It's funny.
428 Shibuya Scramble has got a release date, releasing the same day as Dragon Quest XI. September
Well, no, why
4th.
would they do that?
September and
September.
October.
Oh, right.
Literally, the end of
Oh.
August to the middle of October is ridiculous. It's
It's
Yeah.
like last year's February
February,
through April all over again.
oh yeah, of course.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm more torn by: Dragon Quest and that on the same day, or Fist of the North Star and Mega Man 11 on the same day in October.
Oh
Okay.
man.
I really want Spider-Man. I'm actually really
Yeah, that's like 4 days or 5 days after Dragon Quest. So it's a really loaded autumn already.
Oh, and I guess side note, while we're talking at the trail end about E3 stuff, BioWare recently released a 20-minute gameplay demo of Anthem,
Mhm.
and they really should have just run that in their presser instead of the bullshit interview that they did, because it explains a lot more about how the game actually runs, and it got me a lot more excited for the game than
Yeah, well, I
anything
mean,
that they've shown.
I think that judging judging different groups by their pressers at E3 is a little ridiculous, because it's almost never everything that they're showing or taking ownership of. But and again, I thought that Nintendo's presser was kind of bad unless you want to read Smash Brothers patch notes, but what they had at their booth, other than the Smash demos, didn't really live up to their presser. So it's I don't think you should judge companies by their pressers. But what I've heard about Anthem is much more than what that presser was, because I mean, we didn't cover it in great detail, but the on other sites I saw like people's impressions of it that got to see the live demo were much higher than the weird language that they chose to use for that press
Well
conference.
then, but can't you fault some aspect of the company then, like whether it's the marketing team or whatever, for choosing to do that?
Yeah, no, I totally blame BioWare for their bad messaging during that press conference, but I don't hold the press conferences in enough esteem to care about that. I guess
Gotcha.
they made a messy choice with those words at the press conference.
That's fair. Yeah, so it sounds like if they would have just led with the actual gameplay footage that they released, like Caitlin was saying, then we would have a much more positive impression, or like any impression of the game. So.
Yeah, it was hard to understand. I mean, it's good that they actually showed when they revealed the game the year before, they showed gameplay, because if they had just given us that interview, I don't even know that I'd know what the game's about. But
yeah.
But anyway, it's out there now. They just released it last week. So if you're still kind of interested, but you want to see more about the game to see what it's actually going to do before you let yourself get excited, I would go check out that footage.
That's smart thinking. Cool. Well, I know that we're looking forward to a lot of these games, like I just mentioned, Cyberpunk and Dragon Quest XI, but there's one that's a little bit closer on the radar, and by a little bit, I mean it's much closer. It's actually going to be out this week, and many of us are excited to get our hands on Octopath Traveler. So they just went with the name Octopath Traveler, which is fine. I think it's odd, but it's a very unique name.
They did drop Project from the original name for it.
Right.
It stuck, didn't it?
It did. I think people were just used to calling it that, and they were like, "Well, let's stick with it." So, oh my god, I can't wait for Octopath Traveler. I binged that demo. I was a little afraid to play it because of that 3-hour time limit for a while, but I eventually just dove in, and I wanted, as soon as my 3-hour time limit was up, I immediately wanted to start, a new file and play 3 more characters. But I'm trying my very hardest to hold out and play it later this week when it comes in. So I wanted to start by asking Alana, because Alana, you wrote like a pretty in-depth preview of it after getting to play. So what are your thoughts? Do you feel good? Do you feel bad?
I'm pretty much on the same page as you. So I didn't play the first demo, so I went in pretty blind. I've kind of avoided a lot of Octopath stuff because I wouldn't say I haven't been sold by it, but like I've been trying to keep away from the hype, and I think the demo was the kicker, and it went, okay, now you can get excited because it feels really good. So the idea of the prologue demo is it's a 3-hour time slot, and you pick your first character. And immediately that started me going, oh my god, what am I going to do? Who am I going to pick? But you can pick your first character, and that's just where you start. And then you do their prologue, and then you can go off and go wherever you want and find another character, do their prologue, or you can go off and do some more of your character's story. So I picked Harnett, who is the H in Octopath, as all of the characters' names spell out Octopath, which is very cool.
I love that.
She's the hunter, so her main skills are she uses a bow and an axe. I love the fact that most characters dual wield. I love everything, really, but let's go step by step.
Does her pet, like white leopard / tiger, feature into gameplay much?
Yes. So
awesome.
her main skill, because every character has a path action and a battle skill. I can't remember the specific term.
Talent, maybe? I don't remember.
Talent, maybe, yeah. And basically her battle skill is that she can use use the animals that you can collect the animals and capture animals in battle, but also you can use her pet tiger to attack as well. And it's great. It's really good. Having played around with the 3 characters, so I went with Hannah, Ophelia, and the scholar, Cyrus.
I wanted to try him.
Yeah, there are similarities between the characters. So most people's path action will be something to do with either attacking people or getting them to follow you or to kind of interrogate them. So everyone's got a variation of that, because I think the knight, who is Ulberic, has his path action is basically to challenge people to duels, and Hannett's is very similar. So she can use her animals to attack people. And when
they did a Nintendo Direct showing off more information about the game a couple of months ago, I think they talked about how the path actions are divided into 2 categories, basically like good and bad, or like positive and negative in terms of how they influence your reputation. So
it's pretty cool. They you didn't get a lot of time with that, but it did come up when I recruited Ophelia. It came up with her town, and it said like, oh, you've got like 1 reputation or something for this town. And obviously, if you challenge everyone to duels or get your tiger to attack people, then your reputation's going to go down, or so on. But what I'm most impressed about is that the presentation lives up to all of the kind of like this. It's been the main selling point of Octopath, and I dove straight into it. I love everything about the design. I love the 2D to 3D. I love the sprite work. I love the lighting. Some people have been complaining about that a little bit, and you can adjust it, which is good. But I think it's really effective because it kind of gives you this like stereoscopic vision. But yeah, I know it's an issue. I also really love the battle system, and being someone that hadn't played much Bravely, I really like how fast it feels to me. Like, it's a turn-based RPG, but it's almost on your terms, and the menus are easy to navigate, and it was just delightful, really. Like, I think the writing's come up quite it's pretty good. Hannett's weird in that she speaks, or her village of people speaks like very traditional Elizabethan Shakespearean English, which really threw me off at first. I thought, is the whole game going to be like this?
It's like to a degree that's almost comical, because they use kind of like suffixes that wouldn't normally fit in terms of I'm a damn linguist and I can't remember the term. Like the sort of the syntactic rules for the language, like they are not syntactic, whatever. The phonotactics. There we go. Things shouldn't, like, you wouldn't say Colin. Or
she says, like, the one that sticks in my mind is letting my arrow, and I'm like, that doesn't
Like let in my arrow strike true or truest or something like that, right?
Yeah. I kind of like it. I got used to it, but it was that initial kind of fear that I would have to put up with that with everybody. But fortunately, like everybody else speaks relatively normally, like slightly more traditional, not like yo and stuff. But it's like the only example I can think of. But it feels like a complete package. Like there's just something that it's charming. Like it doesn't feel like this big budget. Oh, we spent this much money on this game, X, Y, Z. It's got all this and this. It just feels quaint, and I quite like that feeling. So I'm pretty damn impressed, and I may not pick it up straight away. I have other things that we'll get to later on, but yeah, I'm pretty damn bowled over by it.
Yeah, so am I. Like, I want to get everybody else's opinions too, but the things that I'm really taken by, like you said, are the sort of aesthetics, and that lighting works really well, I think, to create good atmosphere. I guess I've discovered I have a thing. It's like my one of my RPG kinks is really disproportionately, like eerily menacingly large boss sprites and enemy sprites. When you're fighting in Therian's story in the very beginning, he infiltrates this mansion. Yes, you know about this, and he fights this butler who is on the field the same size sprite as you. He's just looks like a regular person, and then you get into the battle and he's this giganto butler with like a rapier sheath, and he looks super intimidating and cool.
That's definitely Final Fantasies 4 through 6.
Yeah,
like Romancing Saga.
Yes, exactly. So I think of like Final Fantasy VI when you fight early on Sabin's rival Vargas, I believe his name is.
Yep, there's Vargas, and then a similarly colored sprite for a guy named Dataluma about around the midpoint of the game.
Yeah, and so you know he looks like a normal sprite, and then you get into battle, and he's this huge, intimidating dude, and I think that gives the enemies in Octopath Traveler this really compelling sense of presence, and it makes them feel like. The art style, I think, really pops, and it's definitely not something that you would mistake for something else unless maybe it's like Saga or something. But a Saga game hasn't done that meld of 2D and 3D quite like this has. So, yeah, I just think aesthetically, like, and of course the audio, I think, is great. Music is wonderful, just astounding. Those battle themes really cut to my core, and I appreciate that they're using non-traditional or maybe like industry standard voice actors, because it's not just Johnny Young Bosch 8 times. They're using
recognize a couple, but yeah, no, I like that. I like what I've heard from voice acting. Pretty good.
I think it's great. So I'll open the floor here if anybody else has other thoughts.
I'm liking it a lot so far. I mean, those aesthetics and that sort of diorama style speak to me on such a deep level. So I'm going to be stumping up for that super box set, even though I don't need it. I just want it.
It's so cool. It's 8 pages, one for each character, right?
That's so cool. Big diorama. I love it. I have wanted things that I've wanted this sort of meld for a really, really long time, and now it's finally being realized and looks beautiful. I am not too sure about the battle system. Like it's a take on Bravely Default, and it's fine. I'm wondering if like the enemies are like a little bit too spongy, because I'm finding like that boss battle with that butler, I was fighting him for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
So I feel like it could be like maybe battles could be a little bit punchier. I mean, even running around this canyon and fighting crows and bugs is taking me what feels like an inordinate amount of time, and I'm wondering if I'm just doing something wrong or if it gets better later. I'm not sure. I think like this would probably be like my perfect game if it was everything Octopath, and then the battle system was the one from Legend of Legacy. I could really jive with that.
Oh, okay.
Good idea.
But
it's a really fast battle system too,
because I'm a creep like that.
Well, you're a Saga fan, right? So
yeah.
That's what it is. I think you're right. Maybe the battle system in Octopath takes a little bit of like mental retooling to find good strategies that work, because I found that my problem with the Bravely games, I actually have several problems with the Bravely games, but I don't really want to get into it now. The first one, like the repetition especially, but I think that in the first one, the battle system, the main conceit of that with like, you can stockpile turns basically and use them all up at once. Great idea. But what did I do in every random encounter? Use
You
4
use five
times
at once. Yeah.
for everybody and just do my hardest hitting attack and hope to end the battle before the enemies could make a move every single time. So I found that to be like kind of mindless and not fun. But then in Bravely Second, they added that battle continuation or whatever feature it was so that you could progress to a second, like a battle chain, and get maybe double experience and double JP, job points, or whatever they were called in that. I think up to 4 times, but you retained the same level of brave points or turn. I forget what they're called as well. So it was like
they're BP but it retains the same level like you said. So if you use all of your if you used 4 moves for each character on the first turn, then they won't get those moves back if you basically gamble on another random encounter.
yeah.
And it's not set at 4. It can go on basically forever, even though I think the multiplier caps off at 1.5 EXP.
Oh, okay.
But if you use tricks that give you extra JP, extra BP, then you can have that go on a long time.
Yeah, and for me, that one fairly small change was enough to totally revolutionize how I approached the battle system, and I liked it so much more because I think that
it's better in second.
Yeah, it sort of like engenders this more tactical and cerebral approach to battles. So, with that being said, it seems like Octopath Traveler has kind of a similar thing going on, and I mean, maybe battle chains are a thing they'll introduce later. I don't know, but right now, what it seems like is you're just doing standard actions to, like, you're not using any of your accumulated power up points to do anything until you break an enemy, and then you spend them all and hit as hard as you can. That's what I've been doing thus far, and I'm not sure if there will be a time. I guess what I have done actually is I've noticed I've tried to kind of gauge enemy HP pools if I'm going through, like I was going through Honnet's area in the woods, and I got a sense of like there are these rat archers, and I was like, okay, I think I know about how hard I need to hit them to kill them. So I was like, if I want to speed through this area as fast as I can, I know that I can do like a level 2 axe attack with Alpha and the Apothecary, and then I can do Honnet's leopard attack at 3, and that'll kill it. And then that way I can use Therian to kill the other one in 1 turn, or whatever it was, you know what I mean? So I think maybe you can use points tactically to try and like stop enemies from being able to hit you first, but it's not quite the same as burning everything all at once in Bravely's, if that makes sense. So yeah,
it's also got that cool changes
power
the
animation. Oh my god,
lighting.
I love that so much. So much. It's like kind of cheesy, but I live for that crap when like characters calling out cool attack names. I've said that before probably, but
yes, that's some wuxia nonsense that I also live for.
Just like and then level 3, and then level 4. I'm ready. Are you?
That's
Like,
so good.
Kick number 2.
Yeah, I could not get over how cool that was. I think you're right, though, Fenner. I do think that it maybe I don't know what I'm doing with it either, or maybe it is the game, having really spongy enemies to make up for the fact that you can enhance your attacks so much. I don't know. I think that's something that I probably need to discover over the course of playing the full game, but it's a very valid concern.
I still, it's not putting me off. I'm still very much looking forward to getting my hands on it next week.
Heck yeah! It's this week now, right? It's Friday.
Friday 13th.
Yeah. Oh
my
gosh, yeah.
God.
I forgot what day it was.
It's Sunday now, right? So
Mm.
great. Well, any final thoughts on Octopath before we move on? We have a lot of games today. So. No? Okay. It looks great. We can't wait.
Maybe one thing. I think that both in the Bravely games and in Octopath, which shared some of the same design staff, they just wanted a turn-based battle system that had more options other than basic character skills and attacks. So, which is why we have the Brave default system in Bravely Default and this charging system in Octopath Traveler. But I think it's sort of too simple now, just playing through the beginning of anyone's chapter. But I mean, in the Bravely games, the later classes always allowed you to use BP in weird ways and generate BP in weird ways. And I would be shocked if there wasn't a similar, skill curve to Octopath. So I'm looking forward to see how they get the basics of that system to evolve as the game goes on. Because they're saying that the game is going to be 40 plus hours, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
40-50. There's also going to be 4 hidden classes, so there's going to be some kind of
there are.
evolution. Yeah, they announced the other day there would be 4 hidden classes, so
Wow.
Wait,
there will be some kind
classes?
of-
So 4 new characters or changes to existing characters?
I would believe it's changes to existing characters because there are. I think I saw a button or a menu or something that said something about class. So who knows I'd like to see how it evolves basically and how that changes the battle system.
Yeah, me
I had
too.
no idea about that. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Oh, I can't wait. Friday. Cool. Well, Octopath looks amazing. And even with that being out so soon, I feel like it's a pretty RPG-heavy summer for the Switch. We've got the upcoming expansion for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was announced at E3. The land, what is it? Torna? The Land of Torna?
Torna, the Golden Country? Something like that.
Thank you. Yeah, Torna, the Golden Country. So that's coming out in just a few months. Isn't that also September or October?
September 14th.
Yeah.
Wait, when does Dragon Quest release?
September 4th.
September.
Whoa. Okay.
Remember, Nintendo.
And Valkyria Chronicles is also that month, right?
Odd. That's
Yeah,
a risky
Nintendo releases on Fridays, and most of the other groups release on Tuesdays in North America. So it's just a Friday release 10 days after Dragon Quest 11.
Okay.
Maybe we could push some of these games back a bit, like to the 22nd of February.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday, me!
You've seen like every big game is coming out then.
Yeah, I know
There.
that game
No,
coming out around
but Kingdom Hearts 3 is out in January at the end of the month,
We're
right?
only talking about good RPGs in this podcast, Caitlin.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Don't be like that.
Shots fired.
Okay, well, back to Xenoblade though. Before we get too far off track, so Xenoblade 2's expansion is coming in just a couple of months, but before that, we had this sort of like, and it's available right now release of the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC pack that has like the arena challenges, and I think a lot of people called this early on, but the rare blades that they added via DLC that you get from completing this are Shulk and surprisingly Fiora. I only expected Shulk. So in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, available now, if you have the expansion pass, what you do is you can go to, it's in Uriah, there's this little amphitheater, and there's a portal to basically like an arena of sorts, which many RPGs have this trope, so now Xenoblade 2 has it as well. You enter this arena and you fight these specifically engineered battles that are all level capped, or many of them have odd restrictions, like you can only use Tora, which is a goddamn nightmare, or you can...
Especially if you haven't spent the time on him.
which I haven't because he's a nightmare. And there's also one where you can like play as Jin, and you have to kill 100 soldiers in a Titan battleship, which sounds cool, but was actually really tedious in my experience. Anyway, so there are all of these challenge battles, and you complete them, and you get Nopon stones, which is a special currency used in that area. And with those, you can buy some things. It's mostly alternate costumes for the characters, which is pretty cool. The only one that I've purchased so far is Morag's dress uniform, which if you've seen, there's a cutscene of her in like a white coat, and she has her hat off. And her hair is like braided in the back. Oh, so good.
So boss.
I love it. I think it looks better than her standard uniform. So I got that. And then the ultimate reward for completing it is you can, in the arena, you can use Shulk and Fiora as blades. And if you sort of like complete it all, you can take them outside of the arena and use them in the main game. So
Now, I'm still probably less than halfway through this game, but the fact that Shulk and Fiora appear as blades, that almost sounds to me like it's like a story spoiler about the nature of Xenoblade 2's world, or is it just like a cute cameo?
It's just a cameo, isn't it? I think.
yeah, it's like
Oh.
you go into this portal into the arena, and they're like, "Oh wow, people from all dimensions come here," or something. Like,
Okay.
it's your typical like throwaway. We made a crossover. How do we explain it? Dimensions. I don't know.
Okay, it's not like a near thing of like blades are made of people who have been wiped out of existence.
Right? Yeah. No.
Okay,
It really is just presented in the context of like it's a fun dimensional
Ultimate crossover.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So- and it's also, I mean, and they sort of explain it away like, well, we've noticed that the way you fight in your world is a little bit different, so maybe we should support you from the back lines. Like, sure, whatever you say. But then when you do the special attacks with them, they kind of like take center stage briefly. I mean, it's all the blades do that when you initiate the rank 1 through 4 specials. Like Shulk's ultimate is he does like a series of attacks, and like Rex takes them on auto and does some flashes, and then Shulk jumps up and does something. It's cool. One very interesting thing is that Shulk has an ability. He just has the future vision from Xenoblade. Yeah. And sometimes, like I think there's a cooldown on it of 45 seconds or something like that. But every once in a while, if an enemy is going to do a powerful attack, you'll get like the vision where it goes black and white, and you have to press the B button at the right time, and somebody will avoid the attack. So you don't get to like make changes. You know what I mean? Like how in the first one you could actually incapacitate an enemy or whatever to make the attack not happen. But in this one, you can just like avoid an upcoming attack, and it even does the visual effect, which I thought was a pretty cool touch. So yeah. Cool. I've made no secret of the fact that I think that the Xenoblade series peaked with the first game and has kind of slid, I would agree with you, gently downhill. But I know that Caitlin is a big fan, so I'm not trying to disparage it horribly. I just think that, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is probably my least favorite of the series. And that being said, arena quests maybe aren't the most inherently exciting content, but I do think that having Shulk and Fiora available as blades makes for a pretty compelling reward. And it's enough that it got me, I'd been dormant. I hadn't played the game since I beat it months and months ago. And I was like ready to fire it up and to get into that. And I spent, several hours playing it. I didn't finish it yet, but I'm pretty excited by the prospect of maybe in the future doing a New Game Plus of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 with Shulk and Fiora in my party as like my mainstays. So, but I'm the only one who got to play it so far, right?
I haven't. Yeah. I'm waiting probably until the expansion, and then I'll get the expansion pass and have all that stuff. So
cool. You'll get a lot for your money at that point, right? So.
Yep.
But the expansion is a separate standalone story. It's not encountered in the regular story for Xenoblade 2, right?
Right.
It's a prequel.
Correct. Yeah, you're playing as the villains before they were villains, right?
Kind of.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But it would have like a separate title or a separate tile on your Switch screen. Like it's a new thing.
Yeah, it's its own thing. So
are there tie-in rewards to the main game?
I don't know. They haven't said. I would expect there to be, actually, but like even in Final Fantasy 15, say there were every time you completed one of the DLC things, you would at least get like a costume for the character in question or whatever. But
that's probable, but I guess we don't know.
I imagine it's probably nothing too essential.
Yeah, I could see them letting you bring maybe one of the new blades that's specifically made for the expansion into the main game as just a blade without any story attached to it. But yeah. So, okay, cool. Well, I think I'm more interested in the Torn of the Golden Country expansion than this, but I thought it was a pretty neat nod to the classic game. Also, they look good. Shulk and Fiora, like the art style that they chose is a little bit more cartoony and round, I think, than the original Xenoblade Chronicles, but I think they fit well, and they just flat out, in my opinion, look better than the character designs from Xenoblade 2 on the whole. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. I think Shulk looks cooler than Rex by a long shot, but
Rex just looks so tailsy.
I think he's kind of a dingus, but I don't hate him. He's just like
he has like big eyes and hair, like shonen manga style. I don't think he's as interesting a silhouette or a character as Shulk, but
he's got metal thylacine maps, and he can't even make those work.
Well, speaking of Switch RPGs, there is I guess there's still more than one that I want to discuss, but Ys 8 recently came out on the Switch, like only a matter of weeks ago, so that's yet another title in a really jam-packed lineup for Nintendo's console this summer. And we've talked pretty extensively about Ys 8 already. Alana reviewed Did you review the Vita version? Or
yeah, the Vita version, yeah.
Okay. And then I reviewed the PS4 version, and then I want to say Rob Rogan did the Switch version?
Yep.
Right? Okay. So, and then do we have one for PC as well?
We don't know.
Okay, all right. So we don't have 4 Ys 8 reviews, but we do have 3. And this latest version comes out of the box with the retooled localization that was added to the game after the fact for the PS4 and other consoles. So that's nice. There have been already 3 patches, I think, or maybe 4, or the 4th is about to happen. But there have been some technical issues with the Switch version not running super well, or like having weird graphical effects in cutscenes. And it seems like even with the new localization, there are still some problems with the script in terms of like grammatical errors. However, I would take a few like typos over the sort of overall quality of the script as it was before, because sure, you can have a few missing words here or there, or have like, you know, a letter transposed. As long as the overall kind of feeling and tone and finesse and skill level of the script is better than it used to be, I'm happy with it. So I booted it up long enough to play just like the opening section through the Lombardia, the ship, and got to the island, and that's really about it. But I did notice a pretty noticeable quality difference in the script from the previous version, and I know that Solosi and Fenner have both played it somewhat. Yes, the new version.
After you.
Yeah, I picked up the Switch at launch. I'm sorry, the Switch version at launch, and I did not play the PS Vita or PS4 version beforehand. And I think I should probably mention Rob Rogan played it on a pre-release code, so he played it on the 1.00 version. But I think there were 2 patches in 3 days or something. After I started playing it on the Friday it came out. Mm-hmm. So it like I went right into it on the 1.02 version, and then there was a 3rd patch that came in earlier this week, or I should say last week, based on when this is airing. So I think I'm getting the good version of the script, and I'm getting fewer graphical tears and glitches than Rob got that he reported on in his review. So it feels like a very good game with only some minor blurriness and draw distance stuff. That's more in the handheld mode than on console mode. So I'm liking it a lot. I think around the 3/4 or 2/3 mark in the game. And it also, the Switch version also comes with all of the PS4 and Vita DLC costume DLC automatically added. So I get
nice.
So I get to use the pirate costumes, which are better than the standard costumes.
Yeah, and from Adol's armor too, which I really like.
Yeah, and the Adol Silver armor I don't think is available anymore on the Vita, but now it comes automatically with the Switch version,
which is cool. I don't know why. Like every once in a while, I'm a sucker for cosmetic DLC and RPGs. Like something about being able to put my characters in new outfits can kind of like incentivize me to play through, which just doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I get really amped about it. Like, yes, cool. It's like it's totally different.
In some cases, like I think that Donna's starting costume is kind of not great. It's just a really weird taped on toga that exposes her entire like midriff and back. But now she gets like a cool little pirate jacket and a striped shirt with a bandana, and I'm like, all right, this is so much better.
Pirate costumes are always better though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like...
the only reason I don't have Adol in his silver armor all the time is because he gets a dope pirate jacket.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I can give him shades or an eye patch or a monocle if I want.
or a little plushy Fina that rides on his shoulder, or a Dark Fact.
The DLC gives you, I think, 3 or 4 plushies, and then there's a couple more that you can buy in the in-game shop.
Yeah.
They do good with cosmetic options in this game. And I mean, you've already talked about it at length. The basic loop of combat and exploring the island is great, but there's sometimes there's too much dialogue, or they just hang on to one scene a little too long. So that I think this game probably could be 4 or 5 hours shorter and be better for it. But overall, I'm enjoying it quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid game.
It hasn't crashed on you at all, has it? I heard that was a bit of an issue when Rob was playing. Oh, that's very good.
I've had no crashes, no real bad like screen tearing or graphical glitches, but there is weird blurriness especially when you're approaching things from a distance. That is, and I mostly played the Switch handheld, so that's how I've been playing Ys 8 basically the whole time. So like the blurriness is an issue, but the crashing is not for me.
Cool. Well, I personally was kind of looking for an excuse to play through Ys yet again on like hard or nightmare, and the excuse for me would be the new script, and I already had it on PS4. But then now that there's a Switch version, I could theoretically play that anywhere on the go. So I think it seems. So would you say? I guess you haven't played through the original version, House of Lucy. I was going to say
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if you would recommend it as a good enough reason to pick up the game again. But I wonder if it's even fair to say that this is the quote unquote definitive edition of the game with all of the graphical issues and stuff.
I would say either a tricked out PS4 version, or playing this on the console mode, playing the Switch version on console mode would be the definitive version.
Okay.
Because they did add a significant amount of content going from Vita to PS4.
Yeah.
And again, Switch is based on the PS4 version. But I didn't play the old script or the Vita version, so I don't know exactly how big the changes feel.
I gotta say that. Sorry, Alana, go right ahead.
I was just gonna throw a spanner in the works and say, like, I've heard the PC version is basically fixed and 100% now.
That's good.
So yeah, apparently it runs really smooth. It's no crashes or anything. There's no. I think maybe Scott might have said it crashed once or twice, but as far as I'm aware, it's pretty much there. But I think like versus PC on the go, I think I would always take on the go because it's just more friendly. I'd rather play on my sofa than at my PC. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Well, Ys 8 is available on Switch now, so if you're looking for any opinions on it, we have 3 reviews that you can read to get an entire wide view of what we thought of the game overall. I think that one of my biggest criticisms of it early on was just that the script was really weak, the way that they had written it, and the story itself is like nothing super special. It does have a few genuinely interesting twists and turns, I think, but not my favorite Ys, but still a really damn good game.
Yeah, the story's fine, but I don't think it's the best of Ys. Not at all.
That's my big issue with it. I mean, I picked it up again on PS4 very recently after not playing it for many months, and I was surprised to see that the new script is in there with that story, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. And Derek, I know you and I agree that Ys games are at their best when you're in and you're out, and the details are kind of light, and you can kind of fill in the gaps of this weird world that Adol is exploring. Yep. So going overboard with the still you know what? I love the relationship between Adol and Dogeye, best JRPG couple. But do you really need to put in a side game where you have to build up your friendship with him? Because I mean, these guys have been best friends for 30 years. You don't need to your friendship level.
The friendship level with him amounts to giving him a beer and that's about it.
It's just really lots of padding.
Needless, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They doubled down on some of the things that they did because it's using some of the same engine. I don't think it runs on the entirely same engine as Cold Steel, like
Tokyo Xanadu. Yeah,
but it does have many of the exact same systems with Affinity, and you have a notebook where if you talk to them at the right times, then it fills in more of their notebook, and they have 4 entries per person, and
that stuff was a nightmare in Tokyo Xanadu, but a lot of Tokyo Xanadu was a nightmare.
Right, exactly.
But it's the thing that I think that this game all right, let me slow down a little bit. I think that Ys games, part of their appeal, or at least the best ones, are the streamlined nature of them, like you said. And with this one, they seem determined to build out the world more. Like they're talking about who's from Garmin and who's from Rom and who's from Greek and whatnot. You can tell that it's the Trails writers tackling the Ys world with this game.
It does.
And one of the first quests you get is find some lumber so we can build beds in our village. And it's all right, fine, I'll do this and I'll give the lumber to Dogi. And then they start talking for 10 minutes about how good these beds will be and how much we needed beds and how much they miss beds. And I'm like, this is totally unnecessary.
Yeah, it does the thing, doesn't it, where it's we need to go over here. Yes. And then that's cutscene over and you're like, did you need that? No, it's... I felt Trailsy vibes from the kind of scenes and exposition, and it was just a little bit too much. And like you said, definitely.
Lean suits Ys better.
Mm-hmm.
Lean world building, but still interesting and mysterious and fascinating.
Yeah, I think either a little more exposition than Felghana, or a little less exposition than 7 is the sweet spot. I'm not sure if that's been hit yet.
Even 7, I remember back when I first played 7, I thought it was a little bit too heavy-handed with the dialogue. But I like Ys 7 a lot, but I think it could have used a little bit less. And Ys 8 has way more than 7. Yeah, way more. But they're both still excellent games. It's just if we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here of what makes in a series of excellent action RPGs, what makes this excellent one a little bit less excellent is really all I'm getting down to. So.
Oh yeah, I'm liking it a lot.
It's really a fantastic game. Yeah.
I'm really determined to finish it before Octopath comes out because I really am gonna want to put Octopath in the Switch once it gets into my grubby hands.
Yeah, give it a home, right? I still stand by my maybe controversial opinion that I think East Origin is the best East game. Most people seem to like Felghana, but
it's up there. It's a really good one.
I'm pretty obsessed with Origin. I don't know why. It just feels like perfectly balanced to me. So
I am in love with any JRPG that's just set in one giant scary dungeon. So yeah.
Xanadu next, anybody?
Yeah, Xanadu next, Brandish. I'm all here for all these games that happen to be made by Falcom.
Pandora's Tower,
Vagrant Story,
Diablo 1.
Isn't Vagrant Story just like one city?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, and Rob Fenner's also the biggest Dragon Age. He's
Uh-huh.
the biggest Dragon Age 2 fan in the world, of course, Mr. Fenner.
What? I've never played Dragon Age 2. I'm sorry.
It all takes place in one town, and it kind of sucks.
Right?
It's not one dungeon though.
Correct, yeah. Kirkwall and the surrounding area.
Sounds all right.
But there's a lot of Kirkwall, and it's not for the best.
So I've heard. Ugh. Well, East 8 Switch still a great option if you want to play East 8 and haven't already. I would say go pick that up because we recommend it with different levels of intensity, but I think it's a recommendation nonetheless. I want to get Caitlin's opinion on some stuff because she hasn't been able to say too much yet this show. I know, Caitlin, you've been playing 2 games recently, one of which Robert Steinway would absolutely keel over if he had to be involved in a discussion for. But tell me more about the amazing adventures of the android who looks just like Jennifer Lawrence in Detroit Become Human.
Oh, just that one? Or
no, I want to know
about all 3 of them. Yeah, Rob would hate this game, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's already spewed some hate for it in the Slack channel. And I'm like, you don't work here anymore. Get out. Not really.
But I guess in his honor, what I'm going to try and do, since it's been over a month since it was released, I'll try to keep it kind of brief and do a compliment sandwich, which he loved to do when he was still on the show. So a little good, then the bad, then finish off with a little good. So of course, Detroit Become Human, winner of what was it? We gave it an award a couple of years back for having one of the worst titles in a video game. So there's that. It is, of course, as you probably know, the latest narrative adventure title from Quantic Dream, aka it is a David Cage game.
The Sun King himself.
Yes. And I mean, it's got a little bit of baggage, I think, just being a Quantic Dream David Cage game, depending on your opinion about their games and David Cage. If you really hate them, I don't know if this is going to change your mind, although I do think that they've made some strives to improve things from previous Quantic Dream games. It's kind of a couple steps forward and a couple steps back, unfortunately. So the good, of course, is it looks beautiful. For their times, Quantic Dream games are usually very graphically impressive. They use a crap ton of motion capture, and it usually translates fairly well for the time, and they make it all cinematic and stuff, and it does definitely look impressive. Obviously, the PS3 games don't look as hot as they did when they first came out, and I'm sure the same will happen down the line once we get to PS5. But Detroit, it looks really, really pretty. The motion capture was amazing. The actors all did, I think, a phenomenal job. Some of them, especially Brian Deckard, who plays Connor, and Clancy Brown, who plays Connor's police partner in his storyline. They're both excellent. All of the 3 main characters are really good, and most of the secondary characters, with a few exceptions, are also give really good performances. So it's definitely a looker. The environments are nice and pretty and high res and all that stuff. The lighting effects and weather effects are also really impressive. It's definitely a game that if you wanted to show off your PS4 Pro or whatnot on a 4K HDR set, this is one of those games that I think you could do that with. Yeah. So it's a looker. It still has the expected Quantic Dream control scheme where you have analog prompts to sort of approximate what the characters are doing, and they are not necessarily the most intuitive of controls. I don't know that Quantic Dream is ever really going to fully let that go. But I do kind of consider the controls to be a positive for this game, because while the basic concept remains, I think they've refined the control scheme, and it does not feel nearly as awkward to work with as I remember it being in previous games. Like I remember really getting frustrated with some of the sequences in Heavy Rain because of trying to interpret what they wanted me to do with the analog stick, or not having enough time to figure out what buttons I was supposed to press, and then failing a sequence because I couldn't figure out what sequence they wanted. It runs a lot better here. I never really felt like in a QTE sequence that I was being punished because of the speed of the sequence. It's very fair in terms of how much time you get to push buttons, and there's a few awkward analog stick prompts, but it's not really that bad. And there are motion controls, of course, but they also tend to work better than I remember the 6-axis stuff working on PS3 games. And a few touchpad controls that are kind of fun, but I mean, nothing super serious. So I do think that they've made the control scheme work better, which is, I mean, a plus, considering that most of what you're doing in these games is walking around and doing awkward controls to pick up objects and then QTEs. Because, I mean, it is a narrative adventure game. That's the bread and butter of the genre, and especially for Quantic Dream, you kind of know what you're getting into when you start up a game like this, is button prompts, button prompts, button prompts.
Are you doing any button prompts to like dodge every piece of furniture in your house attacking you one at a time, like in Indigo Prophecy? Because oh my god, I forgot that happened. Did you guys, have you played Indigo Prophecy? Have you seen that scene?
Yes,
I know what you mean.
My god.
My big question is if, like Indigo Prophecy, there is analog stick intercourse.
There is not. So
okay, that's something. That's a step up.
Yes. So alongside the control screen getting cleaned up, there's a fair amount that happens that I was kind of surprised didn't devolve into the expected press X to have sex or whatnot. Notably, the main female character, Kara, her storyline revolves around her relationship with a little girl that she has a mother-like relationship with. There's no kissing. That isn't like a mother-daughter kind of thing. There's no sex. In fact, there's no sex in the game at all for any characters. There's a romance in which you can hold hands, android style, and kiss very relatively chastely. It's not like super sexy, like get it on kiss. And that's it. There's no sex. And I was kind of, I mean, like, it's a low bar to say that I'm impressed that they, restrained themselves from having a sex scene, but considering that every previous Quantic Dream game in this style has had a sex scene, and some of them have been horribly awkward, and I don't know why the characters were even having sex in some of those scenes. That's kind of an improvement. Like, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, if the bar is kind of low, then
yeah.
I don't know that I'm in the best position to discuss Detroit myself, because I actually am kind of interested in still playing it, but Rob Simon linked this video about, basically it was like this really fairly venomous attack on why David Cage as a writer is a hack, and what's wrong with the story of Detroit. And I guess I made the mistake of watching it, and I found myself not like universally agreeing with everything it said, because I thought that it was a little petty, like petulant kind of, the tone of the video. But it did spoil a lot of things about Detroit for me, and some of them made me tilt my head like, really? But like when I played Indigo Prophecy, I loved it back when it came out, but it was a long time ago, and maybe my expectations for games were different, or like I just was really immersed in this idea of it being kind of like a playable movie, because that was an early example of it. So at the time I was like, oh, this is super fascinating. I didn't play Heavy Rain. I didn't play Beyond Two Souls. So I don't really know, I can't speak to how he's evolved as a writer or how his gameplay style has evolved. It is kind of hard to separate for me, like the real world situation surrounding his studio with like people speaking out about poor working conditions and stuff. And I don't, everything doesn't need to be like this tremendous fight, like for like, I don't know how to broach the issue without saying like it doesn't have to be a social justice issue. But sometimes like knowing that a game is made under really toxic conditions makes me not want to support it. So that being said, like I had the game spoiled for me, and I know that David Cage is a kind of a crap bag. So it's kind of like, well, I don't know that I'm qualified to give a fair assessment of the game, but from what I've seen, I think that your angle so far here, Caitlin, is great, and I do think that it is a really stunning game graphically, and that you have to kind of go in with this expectation of I'm playing a movie of sorts where I can shape the outcome, and I think that from what I've seen, they've delivered on their promise of you being able to shape the story pretty. I mean, maybe not like overall. I know there's a set number of endings, but you can really play with a lot of the permutations of like, does somebody die in this scene, or how does this particular branch of the story progress on the micro scale, even if the overall outcome is going to be the same. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of choice. From what I've seen.
Yeah, there's a lot. The end question is like, how much do our choices actually affect the ending of the game, and how many endings are there? And there's a lot of different permutations. I mean, there's a couple of main choices that affect endings, but then there's also a lot of little choices that affect, well, does a character reach this certain point? And if they do they make it through this certain point and survive or whatnot? And it was really, I mean, like, I usually kind of think of myself as being somewhat neutral, slightly disinterested in Quantic Dream games. I've played them, not all to completion. I've never felt the urge to go back and replay them and see different endings. I don't particularly like or dislike Quantic Dream and or David Cage. I'm well aware of the reputation that he has in the community, and I don't necessarily go one way or the other. So of course, that take what I say with a little bit of grain of salt. That's my sort of my context when I was approaching this game. And I fully expected to, some of the things that I've seen in previous games, an interesting premise that devolves over time because of characterization issues or writing or the plot just going totally bananas. And the thing is, I ended up really liking Detroit. It's not that it doesn't have issues, it does. And the one big issue is, of course, if you've seen the video that Derek was talking about, I've seen it. There are serious issues with how it presents the world, that to create the setting of this world in which androids are basically used as servants and are oppressed by humans, and to create that setting to allow for one of the main characters to essentially become a revolutionary leader. They use a lot of allegory from the civil rights movement and from the oppression of Jews in Nazi Germany, and it's not super subtle. It's heavy-handed. It's stuff like androids being forced to stand in the back of buses, or being able to use "We Have a Dream" as a graffiti marker when you're engaged in an act of civil disobedience. It's towards the end of the game, it's humans getting super scared and herding androids into camps where they are destroyed, a la concentration camps. I mean, they are concentration camps in everything but name.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of those things where your mileage is going to vary as to whether or not that's going to I'd hope that it would bother everyone, at least that they felt the need to be heavy-handed like that. But it's also going to be your mileage may vary in terms of like, is that enough to completely, keep you from enjoying the game? Or are you able to say, well, that sucks, that's bad, but there's still some things that I liked about the game? And I kind of fell into the latter of those two camps. I don't necessarily like how they felt they needed to, use allegory to tell the story, but I still ended up liking the game enough to play it multiple times. And this was not just because of writing a review. This was because I just wanted to see different endings, and I at least one of the characters I liked a lot, and I wanted to keep playing his story again and again. So there's that.
Yeah, so it succeeded at some level.
I feel like it's kind of weird. I'd like to say that Connor's story is kind of like, if you can just ignore what happens in one of the other characters' story, Connor's story is kind of worth it because it's good. It is probably it's the most subtle, I guess, of the three stories in terms of what you do, and you have the most choice in terms of what kind of character he becomes. So it's more enjoyable that way. But it's a huge, your mileage may vary. I don't necessarily want to say that everyone should try this game because I know for some people that the bad is going to outweigh the good. And I mean, that's totally a fair response, I think, to some of the choices that Quantic Dream made when they decided how to tell a story. But there are, I mean, like I mentioned, they improved, I think, the control scheme. There are areas where I feel like you could see how David Cage, maybe by working with other writers, was a little bit restricted in what he might have otherwise done. So the fact that there is no sex scene, the fact that you don't have to worry about that kind of weird crap happening, maybe that helps a little bit. Maybe it doesn't, because I don't want to say that not having a creepy sex scene, makes up for using these really heavy-handed racial allegories. But it's something to consider when you're looking at, do I want to play this game or not? Some other things I think that are worthwhile to mention that the game does that I really liked was the flowcharts that you get to see for every chapter. So whenever you finish a chapter, you're shown a flowchart, and you can actually access this at any time during the pause menu as well. But you get to see very literally how your decisions affect the story for that chapter and how it all interconnects and leads to whatever ending you got. And some of the chapters, the ones that involve action sequences, have a lot of different moving parts, whether, based on how you approach a character, if you succeed or you fail on a fight or something like that. And you can see how this whole gigantic web interacts. You can even see how endings or choices have an effect on later chapters down the road, and then you'll see those choices show up in those in the flowcharts for those chapters. It's a really nice, transparent effort to show players how their choices really do affect the game in a genre in which we're told all the time that your choices shape the narrative, but I think we've all kind of come to expect that that's just wool being pulled over our eyes, that, maybe it affects a few small details in terms of you have one or two major endings with sorry, but Mass Effect style color changes.
Right, yeah.
But that you don't really have a lot of impact on the game. And this is a really good way to show how choices do, and maybe not all the time, how they don't affect the story. And I kind of applaud that transparency. I hope that they keep doing it in future games. I would love to see other developers like Telltale maybe consider being a little more transparent in how, choices actually affect their narrative. So that's a major positive for me.
I wonder how much of it is them trying to not gamify choices to such a degree in Telltale games to make it feel like more organic, or you never know when a choice is going to affect something or not. And I think that's maybe an interesting angle to take, but in practice it usually just ends up being like when it says so and so will remember that, and then that character dies the next scene, no matter what you do, it's like, come on. Maybe they're trying to, again, make it not feel so rigid and stiff and obvious that this choice branched to that or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe there's room for both. But I think that you make a really good point about it being so clear in Detroit what choices you make and how they shape the narrative. And that's maybe its own kind of experience that can stand alongside things like Telltale that are more nebulous. I don't know. Yeah. But
and then I guess the last thing that I'll say to wrap up the slightly more positive comments is the music. I like listening to music a lot in games. I like to focus on it. And the music, I mean, a lot of Quantic Dream games, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls had really good scores. And even if you didn't like the game, the scores were worth listening to. And I think that the same is true with Detroit. One thing that was really cool, though, that I like a lot is that they actually brought in 3 composers, one for each of the main characters. So each composer, they do the score for that character, and you hear that music in the chapters that focus on that character. So it allows the creation of sort of this whole progression of a musical theme through the course of the entire game that's just for that character. It's almost like creating an audio version of that character that's very distinctive and stands out. And even if the characters are in a scene together, the music changes, and you can hear each character's theme play when they are the focus of that part of the chapter. It works very well. And it allows, over the course of the game, each character has like at least an hour plus of music that's been composed for them. It allows their theme to be introduced and then develop through the course of their story in different ways. And it's really, really cool. So another thing that if they continue doing games with multiple playable characters, that I'd like to see them continue having multiple composers for each character.
Wow, that's neat. That really gives each character a sense of identity. And I know that also runs the risk of having each character's sounds be so disparate that it doesn't really fit together. But it sounds to me like, as you've described, they do fit together. So
they do, yeah, and they're distinct. I mean, Kara is emotional, so her music is very string heavy. Connor he's the character that you can play as either the machine slowly becoming human or a cold, ruthless Terminator kind of style. I will complete my mission at any cost. So his score is more electronic with lots of untraditional or created instruments instead of natural like strings and keyboards. And then Marcus is the revolutionary, so his music has a lot of epic, and there's some choir thrown in there too at various different places. And yet, yeah, they do feel like they work together. I don't feel jarring at all going from a Connor chapter to a Kara chapter just because it's a change of musical style. So, and some of the chapters, like if both characters are involved, the music might be layered on top of one another, and it works. So.
Neat.
It's really good.
I'm a big soundtrack fan myself, as you know, so that's pretty intriguing to me. So
well,
if I play it, it's something I'll focus on.
That sounds like a good idea for a podcast.
Yes.
Oh my God. I wouldn't know anything about that. Rhythm what? Well, Detroit isn't the only game that you've been playing that factors in player choice pretty heavily, from what I've heard. So this is actually another game that Rob Steinman would probably love to be around to discuss to a degree, or rather, like, Rob Steinman would feel passionate about discussing this. I'll say that because that would apply better to Detroit. But he was always curious about, and now I am curious about, Vampire with a Y. You played Vampire, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, Rob actually previewed this for us, I think, back when it was still at E3. So
yeah, they showed it at E3 in previews like 3 years in a row, and I think he told me that he wrote the preview all 3 years or something like that. Which is why he was. I attended the preview with him in 2017, and he was sort of laughing about that. But it looked intriguing.
It is. It's. I really loved it. I gave it editor's choice because I think it's a fantastic experience if you're okay with it being a AA game. It's clearly a AA game. Don't Nod, the developer, have said that it's meant to be a AA game, so it's not going to look as pretty or run as smoothly as you might expect if you're used to, AAA games from the big name publishers and whatnot. But I think I mentioned in my review that this is a good case for why we need more AA experiences. Hellblade's another example of a great AA game, that they can be just as compelling and as fun to play as AAA games without entailing as much cost or time or commitment on the part of the player, even, because this is a relatively, short in the neck of the woods in terms of RPGs. You can play it anywhere between 15 to 30 hours for a playthrough.
Okay.
Which we've just been talking about, Octopath Traveler being at least 50 plus hours, depending on if you're going to go through everyone's story. So, there's that. It respects your time for sure. So it's set at the turn of the 20th century, right after the end, or as the First World War is ending, while London is being ravaged by the Spanish flu. You play Dr. Jonathan Reed, who is a brilliant surgeon and an expert in blood transfusion, which is super appropriate.
What's that about?
Yeah. Well, you literally start the game, he wakes up finding out that he's a vampire. That's how the game basically opens, is with him already having become a vampire. And part of the story is trying to figure out what is this affliction, trying to see if he can cure it, but also trying to learn about who made him and why and all that juicy stuff. And he's a great character. I must say, I really liked him. He approaches things, he's a doctor, so he kind of tries to approach things from a scientific perspective. And he's a new vampire, so you have that sort of introduction of learning what it means to be a vampire and what do I have to do and what are all these other vampires doing, that kind of thing. It works well as sort of introducing the player to a world full of vampires as well. So you get to explore the city of London through a series of districts. Each district has a bunch of civilians that live in it, that know other civilians, and have various different relationships, which you can learn about by talking to them. You'll uncover hints about various people as you talk to the townsfolk or as you explore the areas and find items and whatnot. And these hints will not only give you more dialogue options when you talk to people, and that in turn can allow you to learn more about the various different people living in the district, but they also will improve the amount of experience that you can harvest from them should you choose to feed on them. And that's one of the major mechanics of the game as you're progressing through the story and you're doing missions or side quests, is you need to level up to deal with the various different undead monsters and also vampire hunters that roam London. And while you can get experience from killing enemies, it's not a whole lot, and you can get experience from finishing side quests, you get a lot of experience if you choose to feed on people. And the learning more about them, of course, facilitates things, because the more you learn, the more experience you can get from them. And also, if they are healthy, you'll get more experience, versus if they're sick, they're not at their best, so you can't get as much blood out of them.
And does feeding on them sort of like remove them from the story? Like, do they die? Yes. Or do they become vampires?
Yeah, you kill them basically if you feed on them. There are a few instances in which you can actually turn people. It's story related, basically. Okay. You can't from a gameplay mechanic turn people left and right. If you feed on them, you kill them. Okay. And they are removed from the game. One of the menus actually gives you an overview that shows you every citizen that you've met in a district and will show you their status. And if you fed on them, they're X'd out and you can't do anything more with them. And basically the mechanic is there to sort of make you weigh your options and determine, do I feed on these people to get more experience so I can power myself up and be better able to take on enemies in combat? Or do I abstain and try to find other ways to accomplish my objectives by doing things like side quests or just having to, go through combat being a little underpowered? And it's really cool because when you kill someone, other people notice and will talk about it. If you talk to people who knew that person, they'll bemoan how this person died or went missing or whatnot, and they can actually have pretty substantial dialogue trees if you kill someone. And also killing people, or if they get sick, and they'll get progressively sicker if you don't heal them, can negatively affect the health of the district itself. And there's a series of levels. The game, same menu that shows you everyone in a district will also show you the health of the district. As it gets progressively lower, the condition worsens. And if you get it too low, the district becomes lost. Everyone will either die or become missing. The district will be overrun by ghouls and other various enemies. You will lose all access to talking to those people, any experience you might have gotten from learning things about them or doing their side quests. And it can also end up, depending on what you do, if you feed on people or whatnot, it can also end up somewhat impacting the end of the game, which I won't obviously talk about for spoiler reasons. So it's a really interesting mechanical setup to sort of, give you the option to sort of play your character how you want. And it's great, I think, for a vampire game to make the character have to decide whether or not they're going to be a bloodthirsty monster who feeds on everyone, or if they're going to try and be try and abstain entirely, or, to make up their minds about who they want to eat. If they want to be selective about who they eat is really cool.
It sounds a little Dishonored-esque.
Which I've never played, so.
Okay. In Dishonored, it is a stealth immersive sim, so you can deal with your foes by either, knocking them out non-lethally or killing them. And if you kill them, in the first game, their corpses get found by these hordes of rats, and the more people you kill in the game, the more the rats start taking over the city, and it becomes more decrepit and chaotic. And in the sequel, it's a similar thing, but with these blood flies that are like these giant parasitic flies that start taking over districts. It's an interesting little system.
Yeah. Huh. Like
this. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's neat that they've created. I mean, it feels gamey, but also it's a tangible way to see the effects of your decisions on a community or an area. So I had no idea that Vampire had such an involved kind of ecosystem.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I guess for the purposes of review, I intentionally got a district destroyed by the end of my first playthrough, and I got to see how that affected things. And then I went back and I tried to do a faster playthrough where I didn't do nearly as much exploring or side questing and whatnot, and just to see how things changed. And it's interesting, like every district has a pillar. This is a character who is extremely important to that district, and you have to deal with every pillar throughout the course of the game. And here's where some of those, like if you want to turn them into a vampire, you can have some of those choices. But how you deal with these pillars is hugely important to whether or not the district survives. And it was interesting to see that the choices that I made in my initial playthrough that I thought were like maybe the best choices, I was trying to be pacifist and not really kill many people, they had some unintended consequences that made things significantly worse. I kind of screwed up in a couple different places and destroyed things that I didn't mean to, because I was trying not to kill people, or I was trying to be the sort of the paragon, because that's usually my preference when you're given the option of being good or being bad. And it was surprising and kind of interesting to see that my good intentions were not always rewarded thusly with the game. So
I'm seriously pulling up Steam right now to add this to my wish list, because this is sounding more interesting the more you talk about it. And I had totally written this off as something that I probably wasn't going to be interested in whatsoever. But I also did that once upon a time with Mass Effect, and I fell in love with that. So
maybe this makes me sound like a sociopath, but the intriguing part of that gameplay loop to me is doing good things for citizens, improving the health of a district, getting everyone up to as healthy as possible, and then like choosing which ones I'm going to eat based on how much experience they'll give me. It's like I'm fattening them up to eat them, like I'm the witch in Hansel and Gretel or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of, if you want to do that, if you want to feed on citizens, you are incentivized to learn everything you can about them and keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And then once you've like done their side quest and you have no more use for them, then you can eat on them. And then it's like, welcome all this sweet experience. Now, I will say that the experience that you get, it's purely used to make you better in combat. There are no skills that are social based. You do have a technique called mesmerize that you can use. That's what you use basically to hypnotize people and draw them away to a secluded area so you can feed on them. But that is leveled up purely through story progression. So all of the things that you spend experience on are things that either improve your health or your stamina or the amount of blood that you can draw from enemies, and then your skills that you can use in combat or to stealth. There's a few stealth options, which I didn't really focus on that very much because it was easier just to go attack enemies. And eventually I was kind of, like overpowered because I did all the side quests that I could do. So that is something to consider, is if you don't necessarily want to become a super duper combat powerhouse, you don't have to feel like you have to feed on people, because all it does is it makes you more powerful in combat.
I'm intrigued
by feasibly do a level 1 run or something.
You can. I don't know if you stay level 1 though, because you do get experience from completing quests, and you do get experience when you learn things about people. So if you just didn't talk to anyone and went through the main story, you would be very low leveled. And I didn't actually try that. I've seen some discussion about whether or not the game has level scaling though. So it may be that the game will adjust to you if you try to do that.
I think what I meant was like if you could go through it without feeding. But I mean, why would you? You're a vampire.
But, yeah, you can. Yeah. You can. You can totally go through it without feeding on a single citizen, or even some of the story characters that you encounter. You could do a completely bloodless run, and that will affect. It doesn't affect the ending at large, but it affects parts of the endings and things like that. Kind of a different outcome for the character and one of the main secondary characters, depending on whether you choose to be a bloodthirsty monster or to just not feed on anyone.
It sounds so cool.
Yeah. So, and I guess the other things to talk about are the fact, it's a AA game. It's not the prettiest game that you're going to see. I think character models and animations are kind of bad, and amusingly bad in some cases. They're not the most horrible thing, but it's not a looker in terms of characters. The atmosphere of the world is really good, though. Being a vampire, you can only go out at night, so you only see London at nighttime, but it's dark and oppressive, and it rains a lot, so there's lots of, sort of grim, kind of grimy kind of feel to it. So it definitely creates that atmosphere of you are a creature of the night stalking the streets of this town, this city during one of its most trying times. So there's that. And I think it's a good example of how art design and atmosphere can be more important than pure graphics, because even though the character models aren't the prettiest you'll see, I still really kind of enjoyed running around the city and dealing with various different ghouls. The other thing, of course, is combat. So combat, it's kind of, I said in my review that it's not Bloodborne and Dark Souls, and it really isn't. It's kind of a light version in that you have basic melee and ranged attacks, and you have your vampiric skills that you can use to attack enemies, and you have to be aware of where people are, and you do kind of learn their tells for when they're going to attack, and you have to dodge and be fast on your feet. It's kind of like Dark Souls, Bloodborne in that respect, but it's clunky. It's not super flashy. You're not going to be dealing with super crazy looking enemies the way you might expect in a Blood Souls kind of game. You have various different vampiric enemies, and you have vampire hunters and some bosses that are kind of cool looking, and that's kind of it. So it's not, it's clunky, and there's some slowdown that I witnessed in menus, and occasionally with the game taking its time recognizing that I pushed the dodge button or something like that. So it's not a super smooth experience, but it's serviceable for what it's meant to be. And the focus, I think, is much more on the role-playing aspect of how you want to play Jonathan Reed and talking to characters, the citizens, and learning things about them, and how you deal with the main characters of the game. And I think, for what it's worth, that stuff is really strong, even if the combat isn't the smoothest thing that you've ever played.
Yeah, and does it have, because you mentioned growing stronger via experience points whenever you fed on people. So does it basically like do you have stats that improve, or is it just like you unlock new stronger attacks?
So it's a bit of both. You have stats in the sense that you can increase like your health pool and your stamina pool and the amount of blood that you can, you have a blood menu that's, you use blood basically to power your vampiric skills. So you have to regain blood either from enemies or by using items to give yourself a boost. So you can increase all of those, and in that sense, you have stats, and you do have HP. You'll when you look at yourself in the menu, you'll see you have numbers for HP and whatnot, and enemies will give you HP bars too that you can keep track of as you deplete them. But you also do use your experience just to power up your skills and have them do more damage, or have them give them secondary effects. Most of your skills have at least 2 different paths that you can take them down that will kind of change how they behave. For example, your main health regeneration move, which you do have that, uses blood to give you some health back. You can either have it give you a nice big chunk of health immediately, and the trade-off is that you don't get to regenerate as much from using that skill, or you can flip it and you can get more of a regeneration effect from it over time and not so much health given to you immediately. So you have choices to decide in terms of, how you want to develop those skills. I don't know that I feel like it necessarily super changed the way that you approach combat. It's more of a question of what skills do you choose to bring with you. You can only have 4 equipped at a time, along with 1 of 3 different ultimate attacks. So you can have different builds in terms of, do I want to use the invisible skill that turns me invisible and lets me sneak past enemies as long as I have stamina, or do I want to really focus on heavy melee and blood skills that let me just completely wreck enemies? So it's kind of a mix. I mean, in terms of like, is it purely stat based, or is it all about your skills and whatnot?
Okay, that's a good answer. I just couldn't really tell if this was going to be more like a just a pure action RPG. I'm thinking along the lines of, I don't know why this comes to mind, but like say Mega Man X4 or something, when you're playing as Zero, right? And like every boss that you beat gives you either kind of like a new button to push, or a new like, oh, now I can do an uppercut and I couldn't do an uppercut before. So it just wasn't clear to me if Vampire was like, I'm stronger, so now I can unlock the thing that lets me press X to fly. Otherwise I couldn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Not necessarily. You don't really get new skills based on like bosses that you beat or story progression. Some you can't upgrade things beyond the level that you're at, okay. But you pretty much have access once you leave the tutorial phase where it's getting you used to how combat and how the experience usage works. You basically have access to whatever you want that's within your level.
Cool.
I cannot believe you brought up Mega Man X4, Derek, because I bought that. I bought that on the PSN store like 48 hours ago.
Really? I don't know. It's on my mind, I guess. Mega Man's like always on my mind, though. So.
Oh, I feel you.
Yeah. Well, cool. Vampire sounds a lot more engaging and intriguing than I expected it to. Certainly. So that's 2 for 2 today, Caitlin, on games that I may end up checking out that I didn't really have much interest in before. So, cool. Do you feel like you've said your piece on it? Like.
Yeah, that's I mean, I could always say more because you know me, I can't shut up. So please Caitlin, shut me up.
Shut up. I'm just kidding. No, I appreciate hearing you talk about this, especially because that's a perspective that I don't have access to, and I haven't played either, and I wasn't going to necessarily. So thanks for being here to share. I want to circle back around to a couple of Japanese RPGs where we've got like such a full slate today that I don't want to spend, forever talking about each of them, but maybe one that's a little bit more pertinent because the release is upcoming in 2 days as of this recording, is Shining Resonance Refrain. This is the first Shining game to be released in the US in a really long time. I want to say the last one was one of the PS2, Shining EXA or whatever. Or
10 years is sticking, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's been a hot second since we got a Shining game. And Shining has definitely undergone a transformation. It's gone from the tactical grid-based RPG that I fell in love with Shining Force on the Sega Genesis, and I'm pretty sure those were my first tactical RPGs ever.
Same here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were the first for a lot of people because it was pretty fresh at the time.
Unless you were like PC gaming, it was probably and I wasn't at that age.
Yeah, nor was I. So Shining has turned from that tactical RPG series into like they've gotten more action based, and like I've noticed a trend of them kind of being like harem games.
A little, I don't know. Yeah.
Based on the character art and how they present the casts, I think that's fair.
I don't know. They seem kind of maybe they've been more action oriented, but this most recent one especially feels like Alana described it, I believe, as like a budget Tales or Tales light.
I'd agree. Right? That's how I feel very much within.
Yeah. So I've played. You're playing the full version, Alana, or?
I have the full PS4 version. Yeah.
Okay.
And we should mention Shining Resonance Refrain is a PS4, Switch, PC remake of a PS3 game from several years ago.
It's just a port actually. It's got some new additions to it. So does anyone mind if I jump into the additions?
Please, go right ahead.
Go for it.
So the menu, this is present on the demo version as well. You can pick between two modes, and it's original mode and refrain mode, I think. But original mode is just the base PS3 game with graphical upgrades. I think all of the DLC is available. Refrain mode in the main game you can play straight away, but the only difference is you can play as two additional characters, and these two characters do not affect the story in any way. They do not have any additional dialogue and cutscenes.
You don't?
They are just there straight away. No, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but one of them's on the box. Excella, the girl with the pink hair. She's in the box. She's the villain, basically, and she's in your party, and it's really disconcerting because the guidance is to play refrain mode after original mode, but there are no differences between the two versions at all. So it's almost like I feel like refrain mode, or at least Excella and the second character who they add, should be unlockable after you've done one playthrough or something, and then you can.
So can you fight Excella as a boss, with her in your party?
Yeah, you can fight Excella as a boss with Excella in your party. Yep.
What?
Children. Yep.
I would have thought that they'd worked that into the story somehow. It was like, whatever reason, change of heart, they join your party and like the crusade against the real bad guy or something. But
Dimensions,
just, are there dimensions? Yeah. Oh my god.
The
fact that she's just there, that's so bizarre. I had no idea.
Really...
I assumed something like Derek was proposing. This is crazy.
That's exactly what I thought. I mean, at least make them unlockable after you've, like I said, play the game, or make it free downloadable content and explain it. But yeah, they're two separate game modes, but there is no difference in them apart from these two characters there, and it's a little bit weird. But yeah, what you were saying to lead up to how the Shining series has evolved, I feel like this is exactly what you said. So you said it was going in an action harem kind of way. So most of your party are women anyway. The main character is male. His name's Yuma, and he can turn into the Shining Dragon, which is this super powerful dragon that has all of these. He's just shining.
So it's a harem game?
Yep.
A little bit. There are male party members, so it's not quite, but yeah.
The impression I get is that it's like Yuma is sort of the center. He's revered by people for being the Shining Dragon. So there are these women who are kind of throwing themselves at him and being like, "Oh, we want to serve you. We want to take care of you."
Exactly that. Yeah, and even the men are just kind of bowing at his feet a little bit. But so reluctantly Yuma agrees to help out this kingdom. They're currently in a war with another kingdom who own 3 special dragons that are all named after special spears from Norse mythology. This game rips a lot of Norse mythology. So one of the dragons are called Gungnir, Gaybolg, and I can't remember the third one, Trishilda or something like that. I'm not even 10 hours in. I'm in chapter 3. There's 8 chapters, so I'm judging it's about 30-40 hours long. There are dating elements to add to this as well. So your standard gameplay is you go out, you can do you get given a quest by somebody, you go out, hunt a monster, and go and investigate what's going on, things like that. But on the side, you have all of your party members, men and women. You go up and talk to them. You can build relationships with them. There is a choice element, so you can say something and they'll like you more or dislike you more if you say the right or wrong thing. And then you can take them, you can invite them and go and speak to them on the balcony in the inn. So I think I failed to mention the whole game is your hub base is one town through the whole game. It will never change. So you're working and living out of this inn basically. And there have been a couple of sweet discussions. In particular, the male bonus character that you get. I feel like, I mean, obviously this is spoiling potential story later on for me, but there seems to be a connection between Yuma and this other character. And because you don't meet him straight away story-wise, if you do any kind of dialogue choice with him beforehand, there are some pretty obvious spoiler or foreshadowing for later story elements, I feel. But I'm not sure if it's going to go a romance route with any of the guys, and I'm obviously treading the water and trying it out to see how sensitive or desensitive they deal with it. So we'll see. I'm doing a girl as well, just to kind of balance it as well and see how they do it. But yeah, I'm not sure how deep that romance system's going to go. Apparently you can end up dating them or kissing them or something like that, but we'll see where it goes. But before we were having a talk, because obviously Derek's played the demo. Solosi, I know you played the demo at E3 as well.
Yep.
But yeah, and Derek commented beforehand that he felt that it was a little bit lifeless, and I went in with fairly low expectations, and I don't mind the combat. It's okay if a little bit repetitive. Diet Tales repetitive, kind of, I suppose. But yeah, lifeless is a pretty good word. Like, it's fairly generic story-wise. The characters aren't too tropey, but there's nothing about them that stands out. Like, I can't remember anybody's name half the time, so I have a literal PlayStation blog page in front of me.
With their names. Like, there's like the elf, Diva Magica. I just remember her title.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That's the other thing.
I just remember them as Sword Girl, Elf Mage, Dragon Boy, and Dragon Evil Lady.
Yeah, it's like the trumpet.
Yeah. Yeah. Kirika is the mage who's got the bow, and she's cool. I like her a lot. But yeah, this is another thing that it does. So everyone who's familiar with Tales games knows that Tales games throws lots of terminology at you, and Shining Resonance Refrain throws a lot of weird terminology. Like Diva Magica came up, and I had to stop and breathe for a minute, but it's basically like songstress mage. It's songstress mage or something like that. She can talk with dragons, basically.
I love made-up RPG words for magic. I just live for that stuff. But it can be pretty impenetrable if they throw it all at once at you. And it's different for every Tales game. It's maddening sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. But yeah, combat-wise, it's okay. So I've been seeing a lot of similarities between Tales of Zestiria, and that was the first Tales game that went open world with its combat, and that if you ran into an enemy on the field, all your party members would pop out of you and you would start fighting them on the field, and everything around would just disappear. It wouldn't go into a separate battle screen, and Shining Resonance Refrain does the same sort of thing. It's a lot more simple than Zestiria's kind of strange combo system that works on CC or whatever the Team Destiny mainstay is, or maybe even the series mainstay now. But yeah, you have strong and weak attacks. You can dodge. You also have special abilities, which are called forces. They're basically special attacks or spells. It's pretty basic. Like, I'm not going to lie, I've gotten through most fights button mashing so far. So you have a stamina bar, and if you use like too many strong or weak attacks, your stamina bar depletes, but you can then use like an MP attack or a force, and it will recharge as you're doing that. So MP attacks don't use stamina, which is useful, but then you're just going on this loop of doing, I'll do a couple of weak attacks, a couple of strong attacks with everything, apart from bosses.
And I think skills were on your face buttons and R1, and your magic skills were on L1 and the left side of the controller. So when I in the demo when I was doing the last boss section, it felt like I was just switching which controller side I was playing with.
It's very weird.
It was like a weird pendulum battle system.
Yeah, I don't like that placement at all, especially because it brings up a separate menu, and then you have to press triangle or something to activate anything. But yeah, it should be on R1, basically. But there's many different layers to customization and things like that, which I was quite impressed with, but it's almost a bit overwhelming. So one thing that sticks out to me as a kind of positive and a negative is that characters do have slightly different styles, or you can gear them to do slightly different things. So Yuma he uses a two-handed sword, so he's obviously a little bit slower than everything else, but you can equip something that's called a tuning, which is basically a weapon skill to change the way he fights. And so I bought early on something to help him, like, speed him up, basically, because he's a bit useless slow, and I don't really like playing as slower characters. You have to pay for this, but you don't keep it. So every time you want to swap between a tuning, you have to go back to this one person in town and re-buy the same tuning. You level these up with experience, and they keep their experience, but you can't level up more than one at the same time. So you have to go back, spend 200 gold on this tuning, and then, I want to change back to another one. A new one's unlocked. But you have to go and buy it again, and you can't keep all of them. You have to keep going back to re-buy them, which I like being able to tell somebody to focus on healing more. But why is that not a default? Like, why can't I keep it and change on the fly?
That's bizarre. It's it's like having to go to a town and re-buy any weapon that you unequip.
Yeah, basically. You also don't buy weapons. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's really strange. You don't buy weapons and equipment either. So you buy, I can't remember what they're called, but they're basically like stones that you equip to weapons, and they give you like stat buffs. So like 10% HP, 10% MP, they stay with you. So yeah, you can't have more than one of each though. So you can't have 2 HP buffs on one person. You have to spread them out a little bit. So yeah, early on in chapter 3, like, I don't want to say pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I went in with low expectations and they've pretty much been met, but it feels like the bread and butter of JRPG. It feels like the low end of JRPG to me. Like, it's serviceable, but it's not doing anything particularly special for me at the moment. Like, story-wise and character-wise, it's forgettable. The battle system is okay, but it's a bit button mashy. There are strange difficulty spikes in bosses, so enemies like scale up with you, which is useful, but bosses tend to be about 10 levels above what you are, unless I'm doing it totally wrong, but who knows. Yeah, and then obviously there's the weird refrain mode, which should just be the standard game mode, or at least make Excella and character number 2 unlockable. So, I mean, we're okay. It's fine. 7-8 hours in, we're kind of getting there. But
yeah, I think it seems like not to rag on it too hard, it just kind of seems like a lot of mediocre decisions that snowball into a more mediocre experience than it needs to be. Like, one, the hub town. Why? I mean, operating out of a hub town could be okay, but it seems like it doesn't work super well in this game.
No, there's no quick travel either.
And the town is like really bland.
Oh man,
it's just kind of like a generic European seaside town without any, interesting architecture or features or whatever. And there's nothing to do in the town really. There's like a couple of NPCs, and that's it.
Yeah, you can pick up side quests.
Say a couple. I'm imagining like literally 2 people.
No, there's a few, but yeah, you pick up side quests from people. They reset every day. You can stay at the inn and reset time, but there's no time limit on your days. And they reset, but they are. I slept and literally picked up the same 5 quests the following day from the same 5 people. Yeah, so I don't know whether they're chapter based or something, but they're all really similar. They're your typical fetch quests. Go and kill 20 of these, and what
a bummer. But it's like that combined with kind of the I find that the weight, the like WAIGHT of actions in the battle system feels off to me. In Tales, I think there's a little bit more of a tactile feel, or of a satisfying, I executed that right when I wanted to, whereas there's kind of there's a buffering time I've noticed when I input some actions.
There is, yeah. There's a charge for most actions. Some are immediate. Spells are obviously delayed, but there are some attacks like Yuma has one that he has to charge up, and it takes him about 2 or 3 seconds to use it, but obviously then you're vulnerable, but it's weird. And
yeah. I mean, I don't want to completely write the game off or anything, but I'd be interested to see how it continues to evolve, if at all, over the course of its playtime. So
yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the dating mechanic, if there is one, which I believe there is, and I want to see how they handle characters, because it might be that one character does have an interesting thing, and it might do the Xenoblade 2 thing, and that characters and blades are more interesting in their side quests, but they're tucked away. It might be that. So we'll see.
Can you talk a little bit about the music system?
Oh yes, so yeah, because the Shining series is pretty well known for having an emphasis on music. This one, most of the characters' weapons, hence why the weapon refinement is called tuning, because you're retuning their weapon. They're designed on musical instruments. So Kirika, who is the mage elf bow lady, her bow is a harp as well. But what it all amounts to is when you get a certain number of party members, you learn something called a band. You get a band gauge, as in music band, and it's BAND as a like, what's the word? Like the
Acronym?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it stands for Ballad of the Noble Dragoneers.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten that. I think it just went out as a term. I just can't absorb it right now. But so what this does, it's pretty cool actually. I like this. So you charge up this meter in battle. It doesn't take very long. And all of your party members form a band, and there's one character at the center of the band, and depending on who's in that central position, you get different stat buffs for as long as the gauge is up, basically. So that might be an attack boost, it might be a critical attack boost, it may well be a speed boost, and that's the only musical thing I've seen so far, and it's pretty cool, and it's one of the things in the battle system I actually really like, because it recharges really quickly as well. So I'd like to see who or what else adds to that system, and what other characters bring to that. And
Well,
if there are any.
And when you execute like the band thing, it actually plays a song, right? Like,
Yeah, it does. So I believe the production group are called Elements Garden, who I've not heard of before, but they are pretty well known for doing like anime openings and things like that. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a little cheesy, but
yeah.
okay, it's like Magical Girl, basically, I suppose. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I mean, yeah. It's
I'd be curious to
serviceable.
see like each character. I would imagine there are different songs and stuff, right? Like actual melodies that are different and stuff. So I guess I'd want to hear those and see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. But
Cool. Well, you've been playing 2 games with fairly actiony battle systems. So Shining Resonance Refrain would be the newer one, but I know that you've also delved back into Star Ocean 2, right?
yeah, so this is the only Star Ocean game I've never played. So
It's the best one.
Best one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I've played one as well. So I mean, I played the PSP version, but yeah.
Mhm.
I've just got Ernest, so I don't actually know how far through I am. About halfway, maybe, or getting there.
I think about that,
decently
yeah.
in there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the balance between the discs, because for the first time ever, disc 1 and disc 2 are like equal length, which is amazing.
And not just being 75% cutscene data,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like the ending scene. Okay, so who did you choose, Claude or Arena?
I went for Claude, and I kind of regret it already because.
That means you don't get Diaz.
Exactly.
The best
Um,
character.
Exactly. No, Opera's the best character.
Opera is the best.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Confirmed.
Yeah, I think I just flipped a coin in the end, so I asked my Twitter people who I should go with, and it was pretty even. I mean, there's minor differences, because you can still control Claude anyway. Yeah, I regret it, because DS is cooler than Leon. Leon is very irritating already.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. And also, Star Ocean games have a problem with mages and AI, and that they're terrible all the time. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Rena's okay, because I just tell her to not do anything, basically, but heal.
You can
But-
turn spells off and on for Leon or Celine and likewise, but it's still the mage AI is dumb. I'm not going to defend them.
Exactly. They'll still stand there and get battered, and they just burn through their MP, so it doesn't matter what you turn off and on. They'll just repeat the same spells. I think I've heard Leon, and I should probably specifically say I'm playing the PS1 version, so I'm getting the full experience from 1999.
Hell yeah.
I love it. It's so
want
Have you-
lose.
Have you gone to the sound test feature from the main menu and just
Yes.
looked at that?
it's so good. I
Yeah.
love it.
That's about 80 points.
that was famous. That really threw me off, though. I just don't know. There's some in joke in that localization team that just went, let's stick that in there, and it's like, what do you mean, Claude? Or isn't there that voice clip where he's like, Crawd or something? I've not heard everything.
Fraud advances forward.
That's
Something like that,
it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Because in I think like some of the early promotional materials or whatever for the game had his Japanese like the transliteration of his name as Crawd, Crawd,
yeah.
instead of Claude. So maybe they were like, "Oh well, how funny." Let's make a voice line Reese's proud. I don't know. Oh,
Gotta
man.
say, I think the character art in that PS1 version is way more charming than the
Definitely.
more anime style that they made in
Yeah.
Second Departure.
Yeah,
I
they
would-
smoothed out the lines too much. It's not.
Yeah.
I basically agree.
Yeah, it is. So it's been an interesting experience because having played 1, 3, 4, and 5, playing 2, which everyone regards as the best, I'm enjoying it, but like I think I'm missing the magic probably because I didn't play it before maybe the rest of them. I really like it, and I would probably say it is the best, but I would probably only say that because it's not really gone any further since 2. So, like, writing-wise, the quality hasn't improved.
Yeah.
Or
Almost
the
definitely
thing-
not.
no, and it's had to improve mechanically. I mean, in some cases it did, in some cases it didn't. Because, like, the battle system, obviously
I think
action-based, but
4 has the best battle system, but like
absolutely, yeah.
But the worst
God.
characters in this. Well, no, I haven't played 5. but-
5 is so bad. I was
can't-
blown away by how bad 5 was.
yeah, but
Mhm.
2 has the best characters in the entire series so far for me, minus Leon. Pressus is even okay.
Yes,
I honestly don't mind her. Like,
I
she's-
like her a lot.
She's adorable. She's not too irritating. It's just weird going back to a game and everyone's like, this is the best, and it's suddenly like, well, hang on a minute, like, it's not gone anywhere since 1998, 99. Like, this series is 24 years old, I want to say. Is it 1996 Star Ocean 1? 20,
Yeah.
22
So
years old.
22. Mhm.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it's gone anywhere since 1998, 9, and then Star Ocean 3 comes along, which is good, but Fate Line God is a whiny brat, and I can't stand him.
Yeah, I had considered picking up the PS4 like slight remaster of that, but I watched the trailer for it that's on the PlayStation Store, and I was like, I don't think I can play this again. I don't know.
Yeah, I rebought 3, and I tried to play it, and I didn't get very far, and I didn't feel anything for it. Like, there are some cool characters in 3, like Nell and Maria stand out as being really cool, and Barrage as well, but everybody else can kind of not be there, basically.
Yeah.
But 2, in particular, it's a simplistic version of the action battle system because you can only press one button to attack, and then use, obviously, killer moves, which are what became special moves or whatever. But yeah, I like it a lot, and it's just a shame to see that that's where it peaked. And I think it's the first time I've ever come across a series peaking so early and never going anywhere with it. Like, Star Ocean 5 is probably the quickest I've returned a game ever, I think. Within
man.
two weeks, I did it. I just gave up. I got to a bit where there's a part of the game where there's a point of no return where you get onto a spaceship, and I was apparently between being the right level. You can wander around. There was a section where you would, like, I think I was level 28 or 9, maybe 30. You were the right level for the area, the dungeon, got through it pretty fine. And then there's a bit where they're like, okay, go and do whatever you want, but we need to go soon. So immediately I just assumed, I'll just move it on because I want to get on with things. There's a 20 level difference between the two areas.
Whoa.
No projection. And I got stuck on a particular bit where you have to defend one of the women, the one who comes with the Kenny descendant. She's like working on a computer, and you have to defend her and stop her from dying. And I just went, no thanks, and took it out and sold it. So yeah,
Yeah, lucky you. Some of us were playing for review.
I'm not accountable for that at all. Not at that point. But yeah, I'd like to add some more thoughts on Star Ocean 2. I think me and Fenna would like to do a series retrospective at some point, which would be pretty cool. So
Yeah, that would be really fun. I'd be really up for that.
yeah.
We've-
So
We've never had a Star Ocean game on Retro Encounter. Interesting.
I mean, Star Ocean 3 is about 50 hours, so if you can bear with it.
Yeah.
And Star Ocean 2 is probably 35 max, I would say, going by 15
There's
hours.
so much weird stuff to do in that game, though. I mean, the reason why I like that game so much is it's jam-packed with all this bizarre hidden content. Like, I'm sure
Yes.
you probably have heard about, like, you know, the big to do to get thief gloves and then level up the thief skill and then like steal one item from a random little girl in a town, and you only have one chance to do that, and then that unlocks like a secret super final boss, and it's like, what is going on in this world?
Oh, does it unlock one of the Valkyrie profile bosses?
Oh, well, there's her, but then like I think it changes the final boss into something like bigger and badder.
Oh, I have heard that. Yeah, I missed
Yeah,
the gloves.
it's
I've got them now,
Weird.
but I think I've got them too late, and I think I know the girl you mean because I think you talked to her, and she's like, "Oh, don't come near me," and she walks off, and I was like, "That
It's
seems strange."
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah, like the item creation system, I had to literally dig through all the menus to find. So there's no Welch and there's no like synthesis shop. You have to do it through the menu. So you have
Just
to
making all
learn.
these flaccid salads.
Yeah, so you have to like level up 3 particular skills for each character, and they can only modify their own weapon as well, and you have to do it through the item menu. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like, it took me until like hour 15 to learn this, and now only can I use my orichalcum to make Opera extremely powerful, probably before we go to another planet. So yeah.
Yeah,
like-
not to mention, I was just thinking there's all those other weird skills. Like, can't you teach your characters geography or math or
Yeah.
maths?
Yeah.
He's like-
Maths.
A great novelist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the books.
Publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do publishing. You can play music. You can also learn to speak to gods, so you can be pious, basically. Which is weird.
I remember grinding to write the books that improve people's opinion of you, and then feeding that to characters in order to pair them up for the for the
Yeah,
There
no, that's
are-
smart.
There's like 80 endings, isn't there, or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are
Like
a lot of
including
like,
all the
micro
endings.
endings, right?
Yeah, but every time you beat the game, you get multiple. Like each character will get an ending, and sometimes they'll be paired. So
Yeah.
so it's not like there's 80 endings with 80 playthroughs. You'll
Yes.
get between 4 and 8 endings per playthrough. But
Yeah.
yes, there's a bunch.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm digging it. I can definitely see why it's the best. I'm excited to carry on with it and see where
Yeah.
it evolves, because obviously I've got these 10 wise men who are totally not religious and renamed for this version because God, why would you want to like upset the fire or anything? But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's good. It's just weird to know that it's not got any better since.
It is kind of a shame, yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, Solosi's also been playing his own classic PS1 RPG that ends in a 2, which is Lunar 2, right?
Yes.
Which has
Since
Mystere, the best character in the game. Actually, no, Gene is the best character in the game.
I have a lot of time for Jean, Ronfar, and Mystere, who's totally not the same as Leo. Absolutely not at all.
Yeah.
But I also, enjoy Masked Heroes of Justice quite a bit. So maybe that
You do? No.
Yeah.
Tell me about this Rolex watch Super Sentai show.
No, it's a Kamen Rider Zeo, which
Oh,
starts
okay.
in a couple months. It has some kind of time gimmick, so the main character looks like a Rolex. It's real weird.
normal, yeah.
A pink and
They're
silver.
using the name Zeo again? I guess that's different from Zoe, huh?
No, it's different from Zo. Yes,
Okay.
it is
Wow.
being Romanized ZIOH.
I see.
So
Okay.
it's not Power Rangers Zeo or Kamen Rider Zo. But anyway, enough about Tokusatsu heroes. Yeah,
Never enough.
yeah, accurate. But RPG Fan is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and so every month there's been some kind of retrospective or some kind of special feature. And so for the month of July, we have been doing 4 Retro Encounter episodes about Lunar and Lunar 2. So I've been playing those 2 PS1 RPGs, or I should say Sega CD RPGs that I'm playing PS1 ports of, since June. And right now I'm near the end of Lunar 2. So, and I think at the time of this recording, the first Lunar 1 episode is up, but there's 3 more to come throughout June, and throughout July. I can't get my months right. I am such a mess. I'm so sorry. So yeah, 4 Lunar episodes. I'm in the middle of playing Lunar 2 right now, and I feel like from a story and character perspective, it holds up, and I am mostly delighted by this replay.
Yeah, that's one I somehow missed out on Lunar 2 back when it came out. I was obsessed with Lunar 1, and I mean, as you know, I sang I sang the boat song with both Steph at E3 and then Caitlin most recently when I was in St. Louis, which was
The
great.
boat song is excellent, and
Yes.
when I learned from Rob Fenner at the first recording we did that it isn't in any other version of the game, I was mad.
What?
It's only
like
in
in
the
the Sega
PS1
CD.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So
it's
No,
not in the
boat,
Sega.
boat songs in the PSP remake. As
Oh,
well.
it is. Oh,
It is, but they re-recorded the
Yeah, they
vocals
did.
and the lyrics are different too.
Yeah.
But
Whatever.
it was not
not
the
my
original
boat song.
Because in like the Sega CD version, Luna does not stay in your party. She like
That's right.
leaves
Hmm
when the boat departs. So
I was shocked to learn that because the dock scene and the boat song feel crucial to me.
yeah, it's like iconic at this point for Lunar.
Yeah, and I mean, playing through Lunar 1 was fun. I think I like Lunar 2 a little bit more because I just the characters are more interesting mechanically. Because like in Lunar 1, like Kyle only has 4 skills, and in Lunar 2, there's more customization, more your party can sort of do more things. I think the challenge level is a little higher in Lunar 2, which is not always for the better. But I played both of these games about 13 or 14 years ago. I got into them a little bit late, and I hadn't even heard of them except through online forums like the place I used to go before RPG Fan, as well as places like RPG Fan. But they're both excellent old school RPGs, and I am near done with Lunar 2. And my personal goal right now is to finish Lunar 2 and Ys 8 before Octopath Traveler comes out. And
I would say good luck, but like it's you, so I fully believe that you will do that.
I probably can.
fine.
Like when I get laser focused into an RPG, I can sort of turn into
It's
a monster, and they just get beaten.
it's not even laser focus. It's like you make your own dark hour at between the hours of midnight and 1. Stay there for like 12 hours, and then you come out the next day and you're like, oh yeah, Lunar 2, I beat that in 2 days. And I'm like, the game's 30. Like, how did you? Yeah, you always somehow manage.
It doesn't. I'm not always like that, but sometimes for certain games that will happen, and I cannot say why it or how it happens.
It's an impressive feat, is all I'm saying. And like scary, powerful, and arcane in ways I don't understand, but that you can do it. Are you going to talk about that on Retro Encounter as well?
About my weird ability to play games in crunch
About
time.
Lunar 2, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's 2 episodes in Lunar 1 and 2 episodes on Lunar 2 that are forthcoming, and the Lunar 2 episodes have a bunch of jokers on them. It's me, Rob Fenner, Leona McCallum, Chris Gebauer, and Scott Clay, and so it's a big Lunar celebration.
What a bunch of jokers.
It's a little weird.
Jokers.
I didn't even try to do the accent because I knew
What?
I'd embarrass myself.
What time is it?
It's Rhine time, baby.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Check
those
this out.
those of you who want to hear more about Lunar 1 and 2 can look forward to the Retro Encounter episodes that are upcoming. And then I just want to close out today's episode with the, like, in terms of the big games we're delving into. Robert Fenner always has a knack for finding the weirdest stuff, and God bless him. I love that about him. So today,
you.
Robert Fenner is here to talk to us about a little game called The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa. It is on Steam. Apparently, it just released within the last month or two, and it involves bonchos, squatting, and generally causing a ruckus. So tell me more about this game.
I'm always bringing my weird small games to the podcast. I think it was Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor last time.
Yep.
As you know, the Steam sale just ended, and I made it a mission to spend too much money on weird little things that had just either been like lurking on my wish list for over a year, or just popped up and caught my interest. And one game that was recommended to me by the Steam client was Friends of Ringo Ishikawa, which is, it's trading on the aesthetics of the Kunio-kun games like River City Ransom, but it's got this like lo-fi hip-hop aesthetic. Like, there's those videos that people make on YouTube of like a pixel scene of Japan with like some laid back hip hop beats played over it, and this is like a whole game of that. So it takes like an engine that is very much inspired by River City Ransom, but it's a slow life game, a bit like My Summer Vacation or Attack of the Friday Monsters, where
That sells me right there. But go on.
Yeah. Ringo Ishikawa is this gang leader, this bancho, and he's experiencing his last year of school. So like he's, him and his friends are going around and beating up other gang members from other schools, but like in between he's attending class and studying and hanging out with his friends and like talking about, like they have like these quite deep existential conversations about how like, well, we're just whiling the days away, beating people up outside the school, but like school's going to be over soon, and then what? Who are we without this identity? So I've only played a couple of hours so far, but it's really resonated with me, this sort of like this interplay between like the violence and then just the hanging out quiet moments and pondering oneself. It reminds me a lot of the Taiyo Matsumoto comic Blue Spring, which was basically kind of touched on similar territory. I'm wondering if this is inspired by that. But yeah, I'm pretty happy to just like wander around and catch up with people and see my friends' failing relationships. There's a smoke button. But when you're indoors, you're respectful, and the smoke button makes you flip a coin.
Okay.
Yeah. When you told us about this game before we started recording, I went and watched the trailer, and the sprite work is so delightful. There's the main character has sprite poses where he leans forward on his desk and then has a board look outside the window and hangs over a railing and takes a drag on a cigarette, and just like moments like that shown in what looks like could be a maybe a late Super Nintendo game. I love the look of it. I absolutely love the look of the combat and the sprite work, and just this game. I may have to get it soon. I don't know.
It's like it's what I wanted that Super Famicom Kunio-kun RPG to be, and that game really wasn't.
I mean, yeah, the Kunio-kun games are never like reflective, or
and that's fine. They don't have to be.
Yeah, but I mean, this strikes a balance between sort of arcadey combat with a bit of a more relaxed headspace in between those combat phases, and I find fascinating. I'm watching the trailer over and over on silent right now, and I'm so interested in this.
It's like you attend class every day, a bit like a Persona. And not go to class, but like you'll go to class and you can, depending on each button does something different. Like you can sit and pay attention and take notes, or you can, press a button to look out the window, like you said, or put your head down on the desk and just look like you don't understand anything and you're quite sad, or lean back and stretch. And it's got a lot of character for what it is.
What it is something like bizarre and lo-fi and like weirdly, like you said, weirdly introspective sounding. So
there's not a whole lot like it out there. So, and I'm a big fan of all those slow life games, and seeing something that uses the aesthetics of Kunio, which I really love anyway, with this let's just take it day by day and take it slow. It's really resonating with me.
Criminal that we've never gotten a Boku no Natsuyasumi game released.
I know, right?
Japan, as far as I
play
know.
them so bad.
It reminds me of a juvenile delinquents manga like Crows or Clover, and I really have time for those, so I'm interested in this.
You should check out Blue Spring, Mike. It's really good.
I probably should.
Well, I've added that as well to my Steam wish list today. So between that and Vampire, I'll probably be dropping a number of dollars here in the next couple of weeks. I wish I would have known before the Steam sale was over, but alas,
it was only like £1 off, or like $1.50 off. But I was like, hey, this looks great. I want this.
Yeah,
so
it
hasn't disappointed.
Cool. There was some other pixel art game that I saw announced really recently that I was going to bring up, but it's eluding me, so we're not going to talk about it. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the show for today. I did want to bring up a couple of quick news bites just to close us out. One of those is that the upcoming HD remasters of Shenmue 1 and 2 have a release date. They're going to be out on August 21st, and that's for both PC and PS4. and Xbox. No,
My sailor dreams coming home to roost.
Adding to the Fallmageddon of games coming out.
yeah, August, because there's not enough coming out in August.
Yeah, it is coming to Xbox as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm very curious to see how well those hold up because I feel like Shenmue 1 especially very much pioneered the open world game in a way that no other game had up to that point. And
The
it
world
was
was not ready for
I'm
it.
looking for some sailors.
so am I.
I
Believe me.
played it recently, and they're going to have to make some changes to that control scheme. But that game is a weird curiosity that I'm down to play it again.
Yeah, it was always like, you know, when I was younger, especially, I mean, I still feel this way. I unabashedly love Japan culturally. I mean, like, obviously it's not a utopia, but when I was visiting Japan, I just felt like this magical sense of wonder constantly. And I know that a lot of people kind of idealize Japan in that way, but it really does feel like a special place in a lot of ways. And I was always searching for ways to kind of immerse myself in Japan wherever I could. Like, games like Persona 3 and 4 especially really nailed that vibe of being present in like a little slice of Japan. And I think that Shenmue was the first game I ever played to give me that feeling, whether it was just getting capsule toys out of machines or like going into the arcade or whatever. And
I was just
Yakuza,
gonna say.
yes, and Yakuza has gone on to replicate that in a lot of ways and kind of fill that niche. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Shenmue holds up in like a post-Yakuza era. But Shenmue has always felt like Yakuza is extremely quirky, but Shenmue is its own kind of quirky. It's hard to explain, but and I never beat Shenmue 2.
It's quite a bit more earnest than Yakuza. I think Yakuza has embraced the weirdness,
Yeah,
whereas Yu Suzuki's weirdness is just on display, but he really means it.
yeah. So
There's a urinal mini game in Yakuza Kiwami 2 that I tried at E3.
Hell yeah!
you just like
Sega actually made one of those.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. You just gotta like be in the target or something.
Yes, it's called Toilets, Toylets, and
Wow.
and then that game comes out pretty soon too. The English
August. Yeah.
dual audio and comes out in August 28th.
Yeah.
A week after Shenmue. All right. Cool. Well, that's upcoming. And then I wanted to draw attention to a fun little article that ran on the site about a week ago. We had some write-ups of every RPG-related character coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate when that releases later this year. And I thought that was a really fun look at like each person and not just where they came from, but why they're interesting or funny additions to the Smash Bros. Roster. Like, if anything, I think it kind of stood as an excuse for us to gush about Smash Bros. Ultimate because it's not something that's within our coverage normally. So I would highly recommend going to the main page of RPG Fan and checking that out. I don't know. Here I am. I'm trying to see if we have it under our features or anything like that because I didn't actually research that ahead of time.
I think it's
no,
just a new,
it's just like a news
thing,
article.
We do have a gallery now, I think, though, for it, just to show off those lovely Nintendo Switch versions of Ness and Lucas in particular.
It was great, yeah. And they've got Kumatora and Boney and his Final Smash.
Yeah, I love
so good.
it.
So you can go check that out. It's going to just be an article, and it's called "A Look at Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's RPG Character Roster." Check that out, and while you're at it, you can look at our final complete coverage hub for E3 2018, and that includes all of our various awards, both site-wide and our individual editor awards. You can find that by going to the features tab up at the top of the RPG Fan main page and clicking on that pretty little E3 2018 complete coverage purple button. So I would advise checking that out.
And I think there's the number of games covered in that complete coverage article is between 50 and 60. So there's a lot of reading material in there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So check that out if you're still hungry for E3 stuff, or if there's anything that you may have missed, you can catch all of that there. And then I finally wanted to end by posing a question to you, the listeners. Since I took over this podcast, I have been trying to interject or inject a little bit of musical DNA into it. And I've done that by adjusting. I've kind of played with the audio volume, but what I've been doing is trying to play related music for whatever game we're discussing kind of underneath the dialogue. And I did that because I didn't want to interrupt the flow of conversation and just have like a little bit of ambient music in the background. I've gotten some pretty wildly varying feedback on that. Some people have said they love it. Some people have said they absolutely hate it and they don't want to hear any music because it distracts them from the talking. I kind of like it, but I'm not going to do something that the people listening to this show don't want to hear. So another option I was considering on another podcast that I run, the Final Fantasy XIV one, Astral Era, I like to play music as sort of ways to demarcate sections of the podcast. So I could do something where, say, like we start to talk about a game and I play like an interlude almost in between the discussion. That's only the music and nothing else. Doing that, however, would extend the length of the podcast pretty significantly because I would have like a song for every game that's being discussed, or I could sort of judiciously not do that for every game. That being said, I just wanted to get your opinion, listeners. If you like the music that I've been adding, let me know if you would prefer it to be underneath dialogue, if you would like it to be interludes in between discussions, or if you don't want it at all. Because if everybody doesn't want it, then I guess I would get rid of it. You can send me feedback, podcast@rpgfan.com, or you can tweet at me either to the RPG Fan account, which is @RPGFancom on Twitter, or at me directly, EmbryoNX. That's @EMBRYONX. And I want your feedback in general. So if you would do me a solid and let me know about that when you're sending us your questions, comments, and spare potions, you can do that at the aforementioned email address, or you can follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/RPGFancom. Finally, you can subscribe to us on iTunes or through the RSS feed. Please leave us a review on iTunes. I don't think anybody has since I've taken over. I have gotten a decent amount of listener feedback through email, so thank you so much for that. Please keep it coming. I will do my best to continue to address if you guys have specific questions for us to discuss on the show, but it's kind of hard to get really in-depth with, like, if you ask me like a 3-paragraph long question, it's going to be a little difficult for me to tackle, especially when there's like 5 voices to jump in. So that being said, thank you so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. So for Alana, Caitlin, Fenner, and Solosi, and myself, we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you all later.